Good evening, and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting for Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. During our public comments this evening, to speak during public comments, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person in the council chambers, or they may call area code 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in chamber will speak first, followed by those phoning in their comments. And also, we are masked this evening, so I'm going to ask everybody to speak a little bit louder to make sure it gets through the masks. Call to order. Can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Chapman,
Here.
Vice Chair Coombs,
Present.
Commissioner Elman, Commissioner Feruzin,
Here.
Commissioner Hagobian,
Present.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Good, thank you. Our flag salute this evening is going to be led by Commissioner Feruzin. Everybody stand. Thank you, Commissioner. Now we're going to go on to commission announcements and reporting out by commissioners. We'll start with Mr. Romack. Do you have anything?
Happy to report.
Commissioner Habakovian.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Happy to report. Dating back to June 23rd, I attended the Community Academy class. The topic was Forensic Evidence Collection and the MET program. On June 24th, the chief was kind enough to join in on a conversation with school board member Emily Weisberg at the Burbank PD office in this conference room. It was wonderful because Emily's a good friend of mine, and she had never gone to the Burbank PD before, never had a connection to the department. So the chief and her had a really great dialogue regarding gun violence and SROs, and chief did a great job of making a distinction between what's happening in Burbank and what's happening in the rest of the country. And, it was a really great dialogue between the two, so I really appreciate you, Chief, for doing that. And on June 30th, I attended the Community Academy class. The topic was use of force and fraud and ID theft. On July 5th, Commissioner Coombs and I met with Assemblymember Laura Friedman and her staff regarding gun violence and legislative actions, and I'm going to let Commissioner Coombs, because since he led the conversation, report on that. And on July 7th, attended the Community Academy, and the topic was traffic, motors, and gangs. And then on the 16th again, Community Academy, which was Range Day, which was so much fun. We learned about special weapons, tactics, firearms, air support, K-9 unit. Very interactive day. And on July 19th, yesterday, I attended the joint meeting between the City Council and the Burbank Unified School District. The BPD gave the great presentation on safe driving initiatives, which they're going to be discussing tonight, so I won't report further on that. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Feruzin?
Yes, thank you. Just want to share that, I last month attended the Vigil for Victims of Gun Violence, and thanks to Commissioner Hakobian and Amy and the others who organized that event, and a lot of our electeds were there, and the chief was there as well, so really appreciated that event and those efforts. And also attended a community meeting with council members Schultz and Anthony around, again, steps that City Council is taking around gun safety in Burbank. And just want to note for everyone that next Tuesday, July 26th, I believe, Council will be taking up an emergency ordinance around gun stores and some other topics related to gun safety. So again, that's next Tuesday. If you're interested to, please attend or tune in or send your comments beforehand to Council. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Coombs?
Thank you, Chair Chapman. A couple of items. Continuing to attend the Community Academy with Commissioners Hakobian and Elman. It's going great.
The second item is we did have a brief meeting. This was actually a non-commission related, but it was related to gun safety, talking with Assemblymember Friedman in advance of a town hall that she was hosting to talk about some common sense firearm safety and pending legislation. I attended the ice cream social with the department and with the chief. That was a fantastic event, huge turnout. Really good dialogue, that was the part that's the most. The ice cream's great, but the dialogue and the ability to engage the community is really special, and it was a really positive event. So I'm hoping to see more events like that and be able to participate in that. And the fourth item I have is I received notification. I think all of us received notification that Commissioner Africa Turner is going to be resigning from the commission. This information has been provided to the city clerk, and I don't think it's gone out yet, but there should be an announcement going out in the near future about a pending vacancy on our commission.
Good, thank you, Commissioner Coombs. Commissioner Liu?
Thank you. Just as an amendment to the announcement for Commissioner Turner, or the alert actually came out yesterday, I believe, that they are now accepting applications for the position. I think it closes on August 18th, so anybody who's interested in applying for the commission can do so, and then I believe at a subsequent city council meeting on September is when they will be appointing the new commissioner. Don't have too much to add on my side. I also attended the Vigil for Gun Violence last month. Thank you again to Commissioner Jacobian and everybody who organized it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I also listened in to the joint meeting with the USD yesterday, so looking forward to continuing that conversation today.
Good. Commissioner Elman?
I'm continuing to enjoy attending the Community Academy with the other members of the commission, and I also tuned in to yesterday's council meeting.
Excellent. A little follow-up to Commissioner Turner's resignation. I was very sad to see that happen. I'm sorry that she could not continue with us. She had an important voice on our commission. I hope the best for her. I did speak to some representatives in Modesto, and they had called about some information about how our commission works, and they gave me a little background how we work. I guess they are either redeveloping or newly developing a police commission in their community. And their community is about 2.5 times the size of Burbank. About 250,000 people. I also was requested to speak to the anti-racism group of Glendale, and unfortunately that meeting didn't happen, but that will be coming up again in the future in a couple more months. And that's it for me. Now, we have oral communications coming up. Again, the number, if you're calling from home, is area code 818-238-3335. And I've got some cards here for people who are here this evening. And the first one up, excuse me, is Mr. Joel Schlossman. And good evening, Mr. Schlossman.
Hey, good evening to you. It's a pleasure to be here. Last night, I also attended the meeting where the city council came together, the school board, and the police. And all three divisions put in a lot of work to try and reduce reckless driving. And the Vice Mayor Anthony, I call him Vice Mayor Doofus, he kind of took the wind out of everybody's efforts when he admitted and boasted and bragged that he, as a younger man, was a knucklehead driver, wrecked 4 cars, was involved in speeding and street racing and all this. And here we are trying to there was, also teenagers in the audience. And he just eviscerated all the hard work that everybody had done. That was my feeling of it. A total idiot. It's like a father saying to his son, don't do this, but by the way, I did it when I was your age, and I'm okay. And he went on to brag that he was an Uber driver and everything's fine. And we're trying to stop this behavior. So that was my feeling about it. And he wasn't kidding when he said he was a problematic driver. This is a bench warrant for his arrest in the amount of $8,000, and it has to do with driving infractions. And he tried to say he missed a stop sign, and he is a liar. You don't get an $8,000 bench warrant for rolling through a stop sign. Okay. I don't know if you folks had anything to do with moving the auspices of the animal shelter to the Parks and Recreation. I've been calling for that for decades, and I'm glad to see that it was finally done. Now, we have an official police garage here in Burbank, and that is Gerard and Peterson. And Gerard and Peterson operates through the Burbank. Are all you with me? Yeah? Okay, good. And they operate with the city with a contract, but they get that contract with a no-bid contract, no competition. And I've been talking for decades about how wrong this is. I've talked to Glenn Bell, Dave Newsham, LaChase, and every other police officer in between except this man. I haven't talked with him about it. But this is a horrific situation. It's straight out of The Sopranos to get a no-bid contract. And the citizens of Burbank are getting screwed. Go to Yelp and read the reviews of how we are being treated. I've never had any business with them. I've never had my car towed. But I care about our citizens in Burbank, and we're being raped by these people. And it's not how a city does business, a no-bid contract. You know, if the city puts it out to bid and nobody bids and they're the only bidder, that's fine. But you got to give other people a chance to bid, because this is a money-making operation. And we're talking big money. I looked at their website today. If they tow your car in at 11:59 p.m. and you redeem it at 12:01 a.m., that's 2 days. 2 days storage. And it's brutal, these fees. Now that's a different subject, because they're all these companies are like that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schlesinger. Our next speaker is Tamala Takahashi. And congratulations.
Oh, thanks. All right, can you hear me okay? Okay. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Chapman. My name is Tamala Takahashi, 23-year resident of Burbank. I have 3 items to share with you tonight. First, I wanted to share with the Commission that, and maybe you've already heard, that this weekend, a new 988 nationwide mental health emergency line went online. It was a Saturday. The primary goal of the new number is to make it easier for people to call for help in emotional distressing situations, and in particular with suicide. A secondary benefit of this number is that roughly 2% of calls can be diverted to this number and don't need a physical local response. So nationwide, 2% of local police response can be diverted to 988. Is it possible for the Burbank PD to promote this new number to our community and help us learn more about it, and when's the best time to use it? Secondly, as we are speaking about gun safety tonight as part of the school safety discussion, and our community is talking about it too, I wanted to ask if the free gun lock program is still available. It's on the police department's website, and I think if it's still available program, it would be great to have it promoted in the community for folks to be reminded on gun safety, as part of the gun safety conversation. It's at the burbankpd.org community/outreach or /outreach/gun-safety. So community-outreach/gun-safety. You can look up on the website. Lastly, I would like to thank BPD for all of the community outreach that you have been doing online with your coffee and ice cream events. I was really disappointed I couldn't go to the ice cream event. And the Community Academy. National Night Out is also coming soon. I think that's August 2nd, right? Yeah. I can see how these take a lot of work for your staff and police to do, so I wanted to appreciate your doing it. And I came across this great article. I happened upon it. It's from Police Chief Magazine, called Prevention-Focused Community Policing, Building Public Trust. And it was written by Police Chief Gene Ellis in Belton, Texas. And there are a lot of important points in this article, but a couple that I felt might really resonate with you and you're already doing, and I think it's a great thing to highlight. The first one is the concept of a servant guardian police force. There's a really high approval rating for that perspective on the police force. And second, a prevention focus that prioritizes the elimination of crime conducive conditions and includes in identifying opportunities that criminals will exploit and educating the community on how to eliminate these opportunities. And I particularly remember that when we had our discussion around Magnolia Park and the businesses and continuing that partnership with our community. So thank you for your consideration of my comments and have a great rest of your meeting.
Our next speaker is Dory Foster.
Good evening. How are you? Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm kind of winging this. I didn't expect to speak, but I did want to just make you aware. Some of you already know about my grassroots group. It's called Together We Can Burbank. We started this a year ago, myself and two moms, right after the tragic crash, the fatal crash on Glen Oaks that we're all well aware of. And a week later, my two cars were totaled right in front of my house on Bel Air. And a few weeks ago, they were totaled again. So we definitely, we came together just to help work with the community and be that grassroots group to bring all of the city council, our school board, our police officers, your group, our police commissioners together so that we can work, as our name says, together, that we can bring traffic safety a priority. We've been working with our school board, and hopefully we'll have a week-long traffic week, safety week in the high schools come this fall, or at least this season. We've been working with John Paramo. So we're really trying to educate and then keep our community aware. So we have a Instagram site that you can find us on if you want to contact us. Romick, we work with a lot as well. He's been a great advocate for us. So have you, James. So they have our information. But if there's anything you want, we will have a booth at National Night Out. So we will be just talking to the community, and we are here to promote. We've met with Lieutenant Fromer, and really just keeping everybody aware and educated, because we know we're all in this together to make our community safer. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's time for commissioner comments, but I'm sorry. Have we received any? Yes. Oh, good.
Our next caller is Jason. Jason, you're on live with the Police Commission.
Good
Go ahead,
evening.
Jason.
Thank you for. Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Jason Lewis. I'm a fellow citizen commissioner, and I'm in my second year at the Transportation Commission. And I apologize for not being there in person. I have a prior engagement. Just wanted to start by saying, as someone with kids here in school and who runs, bikes, and drives these streets every day, the topic you guys are addressing, ladies, tonight is personal to me. I want to say, first of all, thank you for sharing the traffic data. We just received that and discussed it on Monday at the Transportation Commission's meeting. And we do see some really good trends overall. And however, you're going to see some disturbing trends tonight, and not just the events that make the news. And I think the reason why I wanted to call tonight and just say my couple minutes is, I think collaboration is key among all commissions. And I like to point out to folks that police respond to collisions, but engineered roadways help prevent them from happening in the first place. And I think it would be helpful to have collision data, especially with pedestrians and bicycles presented or available more than once a year. I don't know what the good frequency that is, but receiving it once a year seems to be a bit too infrequent. And I think that feedback from citizens is one way to find out how traffic changes are being received, and another is the actual traffic data. And I do look forward to a joint meeting, which I've requested between our two commissions, and working towards the shared goal of a safer Burbank for everyone who travels, no matter what mode they choose. Thank you, and have a great meeting.
Great, thank you, Jason. Do we have any other callers?
We do not.
Great, thank you. Commission response? Commissioner Coombs?
Thank you, if I may. First off, thank you to all our folks that have made comment tonight. Regarding the animal shelter, I think that precedes the work of this particular commission as far as the movement from separating it from the Burbank Police Department. So I'm appreciative of the work that was done before we even got here. I'm going to make a recommendation later on. I'm going to be actually making a couple of recommendations this evening, motions for subcommittee work, because there's some work that I think that we can do outside of the work of the commission to be able to respond to some of the comments that came up. For example, it would be very useful for a small group of us to do some research around the contracting process, so we can report on that at future meetings. So I'll be making that recommendation later on this evening. Thank you for lifting up the nationwide mental health emergency line. I was on vacation this past week, and I got to watch it on the news. It was coming up, but I'm very aware that we were preparing to do this, and I do think it's a good idea that we promote that within Burbank. Is it possible to ask, Chief? Is it possible to ask just a real quick question to get an answer on the gun lock piece? Is that still available?
Repeat the question. I'm doing 988.
Oh, sorry about that.
I was with my clinician this morning.
No problem. The website does indicate that folks can come to the counter to request a free gun lock at the police department. Is that still a program?
That is still available.
Great.
We check on it, every 2 weeks, and we have a bountiful supply of gun locks.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And again, kudos to all the events that have been going on in the community as well. Also appreciative of the opportunity to work with Together We Can, with Commissioner Hagobian and with Dory and the rest of the crew. My condolences to the vehicles continuing to get hit, and if I wish we had an easy solution to that, but I do appreciate that we're working on that together. As far as the phone call goes, from Commissioner Lewis from the Transportation Commission, this again, I want to make a recommendation, a motion later on that we do some subcommittee work, because it would be good, especially after watching last night's joint city council school board meeting. I think doing some work outside between meetings would be really helpful for all of us. The important thing is I just want to encourage us all to have an agenda walking into those meetings, so that we know specifically what we're working on. My understanding, and I know we don't have Ms. O here tonight, and Chief, I can't really put you on the spot about this, but if we have 3 or fewer commissioners from any particular commission, that would not violate the Brown Act, if I believe that's correct.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
So I think you'll be just fine.
Okay, so we'll try to get that work done so we can start communicating outside of this meeting, but really, really appreciate the comments tonight.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Fruzen?
Yes, I want to echo many of the things that Commissioner Coombs said. I won't repeat them, but just to say that, regarding the traffic safety, that is something that I've been trying to focus on a bit. And so we do have a pending request for some of that data with the department. They have a lot of priorities, so, they got to work it in there when they can, which I understand. But I would be interested in, continuing on that. I plan to continue doing that, and so I appreciate the continuing that conversation with another commission that, as it relates, and also with the community.
Good. Commissioner Hagobian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. I just want to thank all the public comments for coming in tonight. Want to also do want to repeat what Commissioner Coombs and Commissioner Frazan said, but also echo the same words. To Ms. Takahashi, thank you so much for the resources, and something that I was not aware of at all, and I'm tethered with Commissioner Coombs, and I'm understanding his world of mental health, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And also echoing what you said about the Burbank PD social media. I do social media marketing, and I am literally addicted to just clicking on the story to see what's next, and it's been fantastic because you get to see the activity that's coming to the community, you get to see what they're doing in the community, so it's great for transparency. And also, finally, with together we can. Dory, thank you so much for coming down and providing your public comment. It's been a pleasure working with you, Yolanda, and the rest of your team. Really excited about what's to come. We are working on that West Coast Customs PSA with Ryan Fedelingas and his team. He's the CEO of the West Coast Customs, and should be exciting. So let's see how that pans out. But thank you so much for everyone for coming.
Good. Commissioner Liu?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Won't add too much more. I think a lot of the other commissioners said a lot of what I had to respond to. But one thing that I did want to point out was thank you to all of the people who provided commentary, because a lot of the comments today are directly tied with some of the agenda items that we will be discussing today. So I think that that'll be really good context and color for us to consider when talking and asking questions. And I think to follow up with Commissioner Feruzan's note on this ongoing work that we've been doing and trying to get some data. Thank you to Commissioner Lewis for calling in, because I do think that traffic safety is a joint endeavor with the Transportation Commission, and totally on board with working together and leveraging the data that's available to come to hopefully a productive solution there. So looking forward to work on that as well.
Commissioner Elman? No, okay. I think everybody covered pretty well. I too would like to thank the people for presenting this evening. It's important that the commission hear from the public, both concerns and kudos. I think it's an excellent that everybody showed up this evening or called in. Now we move on to the approval of the minutes from the June 15th meeting. Did everybody get a copy of the minutes? And
I will motion to approve the minutes from the June meeting.
We have a motion from
Second it.
Commissioner Coombs and a second from Mr. Jacobian. Those that are in favor, raise your hand. Right? Aye. Good. It's unanimous. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Can I abstain since I wasn't in attendance? Yeah.
Okay. Our items of business this evening. First one is a presentation, discussion, and possible recommendations on the department's traffic safety efforts, including those implemented following the August 3rd, 2021 fatal traffic accident on Glen Oaks Boulevard. And I'm not sure who is going to be giving our presentation this evening, but would you step up? It looks like it's Officer Froman.
Yeah, good evening.
Lieutenant Froman.
Good evening. Chair Chapman,
Good
Vice
evening.
Chair Coombs, Commissioners, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm going to be discussing with you the traffic safety update after we had the unfortunate tragic collision at Glen Oaks and Andover in August of 2021. I'm Lieutenant John Fromer. I got a nice little, where's storage? Is it up? Okay. So I'm Lieutenant John Fromer, and I am running right now the Traffic Bureau, which includes motor officers, parking control officers, parking citation management, as well as film permits. And they all tie in, even though on face value it may not seem so. But I'm here to answer any questions on that. I want to get into the collision. This occurred on August 3rd, 2021 at 11:49 p.m., so just before midnight. 3 young adults, ages 19, 20, and 21, were killed in a traffic collision as a result of 2 male subjects engaged in a illegal street racing contest that originated in the city of Glendale, northbound on Glen Oaks Boulevard, all the way into our city. The Burbank Police Department worked very closely with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, and we were able to successfully file murder charges against both of those drivers. The ages of those drivers were 19 and 16 at the time of this collision. Just want to show you, preface this video is, this isn't the first time that we've had such a tragic collision in the city of Burbank. I'll start here with the video. So on September 28th of 2013.
Breaking news in Burbank, a fiery crash leaves several people dead and at least one person in the hospital.
Investigators are here on scene trying to figure out what happened. Multiple people believed to be dead inside of a car that burst into flames early this morning. If you take a quick look behind me, it's difficult to see because we're being held pretty far back, but investigators are here on scene, including fire and the coroner. Right now, there isn't an exact number of fatalities, but it could be as many as 5, we are told. And this happened at 4:15 this morning. Police say the vehicle exited the 5 South on the Scott Road off-ramp at a high rate of speed, continued down San Fernando Boulevard, and then smashed into the concrete pillar of the freeway and burst into flames. One passenger, an 18-year-old female, was ejected from the vehicle. She was transported to the LA County Medical Center. Her condition is not known at this time. Now, police say it is going to be some time before they can identify the victims or even determine how many victims there are. This is a very tragic accident. Officers here on scene saying it's one of the worst they have seen.
It's a horrific scene. It's a tragedy. There's multiple fatalities in the vehicle. This is a tough one. Speed was involved. Initial investigation is it's a single vehicle accident, and there's no other vehicles involved.
A candlelight vigil was held Sunday night in Burbank for 5 people killed in a fiery car crash. All 5 of the victims were in their late teens and early 20s. The single car crash also left 1 person injured in the early hours of Saturday morning near the Scott Road off-ramp of the 5 freeway. The 18-year-old female passenger who managed to escape from the burning sedan was being treated for non-life-threatening injuries at Los Angeles County USC Medical Center. The cause of the crash is still under investigation, but Burbank Police Sergeant Darren Ryburn said speed may have been a contributing factor. Burbank Unified School officials said Monday that grief counselors spent the day at 2 Burbank high schools to help students and teachers cope with the loss.
And then on August,
3 people are dead and
August
2
3rd.
others are hurt after a fiery crash in Burbank.
The sound of heartbreak in Burbank. A father believes his 19-year-old daughter may be among the dead. Anguish, police say, may have been caused by street racing.
We are now learning from police that the 3 people who were killed in that car and the one that was sent to the hospital may have been innocent victims just trying to turn when they were crashed into by 2 cars that were speeding.
Police say tragedy struck just before midnight when a Mercedes and Kia, who may have been racing for more than a mile, came across Glen Oaks and Andover. The Kia T-boned the Volkswagen as it was turning left. The impact so powerful, the VW split in 2, throwing 2 people from the car.
Our top story, stop the speeding. That's what people in Burbank are tonight demanding. Just 1 week after street racers killed 3 innocent people.
As KCAL 9's Jeff Nguyen reports tonight, protesters came to City Hall demanding police crack down on the racers.
Nearly a week after a deadly crash at this intersection, a community says enough is enough when it comes to street racing. The memorial at the corner of Glen Oaks and Andover in Burbank has been growing for 21-year-old Serene Baker, 20-year-old Jaden Johnson, and 19-year-old Natalie Mohaddam. The 3 were killed and a 4th friend injured when they were in this Volkswagen that was struck by a Kia that police say was racing with a Mercedes last week. About 50 people held a rally outside Burbank City Hall Tuesday evening to demand action to prevent street racing. Demonstrators say they want more enforcement because cars race here too often. The demonstration happened during a city council meeting that was not open to the public. The mayor of Burbank sent a statement that read in part, City Council and staff look forward to working with all community members to help heal and educate about the dangers of illegal street racing so that we can prevent a tragedy like this from happening again in Burbank.
The reason I show that, it's the longest video in this presentation. The reason why I show that is I want to show and the support amongst the community from the police department, all the other city departments, that we all echo enough is enough when it comes to this. I think we all saw the emotion in the family, the tragedy, and the community members that came together to march on City Hall and state that they don't ever want to see these types of images again. Unfortunately, it replayed itself from 2013 to 2021. The Burbank Police Department is going to be involved in a two-prong approach. There's actually three aspects that we should all be familiar with. It's education, enforcement, and engineering. The engineering is not my specialty or the police department. That's the Public Works and the Traffic Engineer's Office. But we work closely hand in hand with them. We focus on obviously the enforcement and the education portion. It was fantastic to have conversations with citizens such as Ms. Dory Foster, the fellow members that started Together We Can Burbank, Lisa and Yolanda, to get the stakeholders of the community involved, because now they are assisting with that outreach and that educational portion. Fantastic to hear. We've been working with her to try to get more information and more time in the high schools where we're trying to reach these young drivers. I think you saw in those two video clips right there that those unfortunate collisions, those tragedies occurred early morning hours with young drivers. That tends to be overwhelmingly the young drivers are the ones that are involved in this dangerous driving behavior, okay? Give you a little background on the fatal collisions in the city of Burbank. I went back, just to go back to 2017 through 2022 year to date. We've had 22 fatal traffic collisions, okay? Of those 22, there's 9 vehicle versus pedestrian collisions, 6 vehicle versus vehicle, 5 motorcycle collisions, and 2 vehicle versus bicycle collisions. Of those total 22, there was 4 that were DUI collisions or subjects driving while impaired. And that could be just pure alcohol or a mixture of alcohol and drugs. That gives us an average of 4 fatal collisions a year. Prior to 2021, we were averaging around 3 fatal collisions per year. 2021 was an abnormality, and what this can be attributed to, this is nationwide, but here in California, especially in Southern California, there was a lot of dangerous driving behavior that started during COVID-19. With the stay-at-home orders, several people were working from home or just staying at home, and with that, there was a drastic decrease in traffic volume on our roadways. With the people remaining on the roadways and deciding to drive, unfortunately, they were exhibiting some very dangerous behavior, such as running stop signs at full speed, driving double, triple the posted speed limits on city streets. And what's unfortunate and what's causing these conflicts is now that traffic volumes have returned to somewhat normal, that's when you have the vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists coming into conflict. However, now speed is involved. So when the speed is involved, it reduces the reaction time of the driver to react to dangers on the roadway, such as a child, a bicyclist, a skateboarder, riding out into the street. However, they're driving double, triple the posted speed limit, and now that reduces their ability to react and stop in time. And when you have a vehicle versus a pedestrian or a bicyclist collision, they're less protected and the injuries are very severe. When you have vehicle versus vehicle at 80, 90, 100 miles per hour, the severity of the injuries is drastic. And a lot of these are not survivable at those speeds. Some traffic enforcement efforts that the Burbank Police Department has done. This is under the guidance of Chief Albanese, as well as Captain Adam Cornels. What we have done is we've increased the targeted enforcement for speed operations. We specifically focused on speeding violations. We put out speed display trailers. We utilize these as a deterrent. Your average driver will see this, notice that it's flashing. They don't want to get a citation for speeding, so they will automatically slow down. This also captures data for us on traffic volume and traffic speeds, so we can truly tell date and time. We can tell the hour of the day where there tends to be more violations, or even if there is violations. Sometimes the information we get back, there's a perceived problem on a certain street, but when we get the traffic data back, people are usually, the average speed is around the posted speed limit. Sometimes that's not so. It's 10, 12, 15 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, which is getting into a dangerous area. Interagency collaboration with the Glendale Police Department. I've worked very closely with their traffic bureau lieutenant, now promoted to a captain, but Lieutenant Toby Darby. We were both very interested because they are also, we're not the only city that saw this increase in speed and dangerous driving behaviors. They have more of a severe issue than the city of Burbank did as far as fatal traffic collisions. We were both very interested in augmenting our numbers. How many motor officers that are specifically trained in traffic operations and traffic enforcement, get them out on the street, let people see that we're out there, and then get people to slow down. The effect has been very good. The operation we did this on June 4th, 200 enforcement stops with 190 traffic citations. I could tell you within an hour, Glen Oak, we focused on the hillside and on Glen Oaks on both sides of the borders of our city. And I could tell you within an hour it was a ghost town on Glen Oaks Boulevard. The message was out. I still get approached by citizens that say they see us, they recognize what we did that day, they see us out in force and out in numbers, and that they have actually seen some speed reduction. And that is the goal. We've expanded the hours of the field deployment for officers specially trained in traffic operations. We have and created a DUI enforcement team who are specially trained in impaired driving as well as traffic enforcement. We now have hours till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning throughout the week. That's not every day. We're still trying to get a couple more officers involved in the DUI enforcement team so that 6, 7 days a week we will have traffic officers until 3 o'clock in the morning. This has had a great impact. We're seeing more arrests, more citations, and more of a focus on traffic. Last thing, we're securing grant funding through the California Office of Traffic Safety. This isn't new for the Burbank Police Department. We try to do this every year. However, we've sought additional funding from them, which they have provided. This funding is federal dollars that actually comes from the National Highway Transportation Traffic Safety Administration, called NHTSA. That money is given to the California Office of Traffic Safety. We get it in the form of Selective Traffic Enforcement Program grant. It's called a STEP grant. And I have more information in here about that. Last year was $100,000 secured in that grant fund. This year, they've advised us that it appears we'll have a tentative agreement to have $120,000, but that is not finalized at this point. Enforcement results from August 4th to December 31st of 2021, so the day after the fatal traffic collision in Glen Oaks, Andover, until the end of the year of 2021. You can see that we focused heavily on the hillside. Other major thoroughfares in the city with speeding problems, we issued 1,468 speed citations. If you look at this distracted driving, which is also a cause of several of our collisions in town, people on their cell phones, people not paying attention, we had 354 citations. The speed citations at that time was just under 50% of our total citations for traffic enforcement for the motor officers alone. So we put an emphasis on that because we wanted to get people to slow down. January 1st of 2022 through yesterday, July 19th of 2022, we've issued 1,460 speeding citations, and we've issued 1,093 distracted driving citations. So you could see the distracted driving citations on the right on a sharp increase. Real quick video, just to give you an idea of what you can see on a weekly basis in the city of Burbank, city of Glendale, Southern California, and the state of California. is why traffic laws matter, and this is why it's important for the Burbank Police Department to do the enforcement and education that we do. If you see from that video, a lot of left turning movements. You'll see people in a rush. You'll see some of these traffic collisions that don't really make sense as to why the driver was able to be involved in the collision they were involved in. So a lot of this has to do with not paying attention, distracted driving. The speed involved is also a factor. As you're speeding down the roadway, somebody simply trying to pull off a side street in front of you is not going to expect that driver, instead of the posted 35, to be driving at 75 miles per hour. And you can't project that they're driving that fast and these collisions occur. So this is why it's very important that we continue our efforts in the traffic safety aspect. Here is just some basic information on the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. I'm just giving you an overview of 2021 to 2022. We received $100,000 in grant funding. We're asking for $120,000 so that we can increase our collaborative efforts with the City of Glendale and a couple other programs that I'll talk about here in a later slide that we're having early discussions about joining some other departments and some of their task force. The federal fiscal year for the OTS is October through September. Just to give you a basis of when we would receive that funding. We usually get awarded near the end of July. We have to come before City Council to get approval on the grant. And then once that's approved and finalized, we will receive the opportunity to work the grant, which is paid back to us. The city pays for it up front, and we get reimbursed through the program. The programs that we run through this, we do DUI. I think Commissioner Ellman, you've been out to a few of these. I would welcome any of the commissioners that want to come out to our DUI checkpoints or any of the other operations that we do. We have the DUI checkpoints with DUI saturation. DUI saturation is putting more officers in marked patrol vehicles, full uniform, looking for DUI or impaired drivers. Primary collision factor enforcement, that's traffic enforcement. So primary collision factor is when the officers do a collision investigation, they determine what the primary collision factor was. Was it speed? Was it DUI? Was it unsafe turning movements? We basically go through the whole vehicle code and determine what caused that collision. We like to, through this grant, we can focus, I've already shown a few videos of that left-hand turning movement. That is a big violation in the city, and it's a big cause of a lot of collisions in the city. So we'd like to focus primarily at certain intersections where we're seeing this problem. We would use that opportunity through the grant funding to specifically work that primary collision factor. Bicycle enforcement, pedestrian enforcement, motorcycle enforcement, as well as the traffic safety presentations that we like to do. And those can focus on, they have to be geared towards the topics listed here. We can't go and create our own program or our own campaign to get the grant funding for it to do. This was a big endeavor. The chief orchestrated this. This was done through our Cops Bureau and our Traffic Bureau. Lieutenant Derek Green, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to have him present in front of you yet. But his bureau and our bureau created a mindfulness for young drivers course in the Burbank Unified School District. A lot of this was done through the Superintendent Matt Hill, John Paramo, and Burbank High School, as well as John Burroughs High School. This course consisted of 3 separate modules. We did a basic introduction to the rules of the road. We followed that up with distracted driving and impaired driving, and then we put a heavy emphasis on speeding and reckless driving. This was geared towards 9th grade students. We wanted to get in touch with young drivers before they got behind the wheel of a car. And so far, this has been very successful with a lot of positive feedback from the school administrators, the board, parents, as well as the students. The officers involved spoke very highly of the interaction that they had with these young drivers and the ability to exchange ideas and information so that they understood what our purpose is in law enforcement as far as the doing the enforcement aspect for traffic safety, as well as getting their understanding of what to expect when they start driving on our roadways. Just over 1,350 9th grade students that were able to attend these 3 courses. We're in discussions on expanding this. It's very good that the school themselves, as well as the students, are interested in expanding this to the other grades in the high school. And we would like to see that come to fruition. The traffic safety messages that we're also releasing on our BPD, our Burbank Police Department social media platforms. Our PIO, Sergeant Brent Feckety, has done a fantastic job working with us. We've tried to do more modern videos that will reach out to a younger driver as well as every driver instead of focusing on one group. We're trying to make it for all drivers. We've done several good videos on the dangers of speed and reckless driving, wearing your seatbelt, bicycle safety, and a number of different topics. We're trying to leverage this because it's our ability on the social media to reach a larger audience in our community. If we were to do it at the police department, invite people, we may get 100 or 200 people. When we're using social media, it reaches not only our own community, but those around us, and we can reach 10, 20, 30,000 people within days versus 200 people within a 2-hour session. Last video, and I apologize for the videos, but I want to give you an understanding that this isn't a Burbank issue. This is a state issue. This here will give you some basic information from the City of Los Angeles and the California Highway Patrol.
When the pandemic began and we got those stay-at-home orders, we almost immediately saw fewer cars on the road. And there's a lot of drivers out there who saw all that open space as an opportunity to hit the gas. But police say there are consequences to those actions.
What you're looking at are just some of the 6,500 traffic collisions so far this year in the city of Los Angeles, and most of them involve excessive speed. And although the numbers are down slightly from last year, detectives say there is still an epidemic of speed on our city streets.
In 2020, citywide in Los Angeles, tragically, 150 people have been killed in traffic-related collisions.
And the speed problem bleeds onto our freeways too, which involves the CHP.
They have seen, in terms of 100 mile per hour plus citations, an 87% increase overall since April.
Police are asking drivers to just slow down and wear your seatbelt. And if you're a passenger in a speeding car, they say take a stance, demand that the driver slow down, or call 911. It's your life, and others are affected by your loss.
These fatalities that have been happening are not only a loss from the driver, but also the impact that it has on family members, loved ones, and people in the community.
Investigators say that anytime you drive fast, you have less time to react to a problem, and injuries will be much greater. The criminal consequences also go up too when you speed, right along with tougher civil penalties. And if you're a speeding driver who happens to survive a wreck that kills somebody else, prepare for your own emotional trauma.
It is a life-changing, traumatic situation when a driver who's coming home from an evening out in LA kills themselves, the passenger, or another vehicle. It's very traumatic, and a lot of times they do require psychological counseling.
Drivers are encouraged to simply back off the accelerator. Allow some extra time to get to your destination so you can stay within the speed limits. And most importantly, get there safely, alive, and in one piece.
And police say try to drive defensively. That way you'll be more prepared should things start falling apart all around you. In Hollywood, I'm Rick Chambers. Guys, let me throw it back to you.
The speeding and reckless driving issue we've recognized has increased sharply after COVID-19 as a result of our roadways being empty. The Burbank Police Department has been proactive in obtaining training and education in this. We do not currently have a street takeover, organized street racing problem in the city of Burbank. It surrounds our community. You see Inglewood, Los Angeles, places out south, places out east, such as we had out in San Bernardino, out in Fontana. Had a most recent incident in the news with the street takeover. But the issue can come here at any moment. These are organized online through social media. You get these car groups that will pop up. They will share the information, and within an hour, one subject posting this information could turn into 5,000 to 10,000 vehicles on our streets that are specifically modified and equipped for racing. This is what we don't want to have happen in our city. The primary thing we're looking for, just giving you the codes for 22-350 of the vehicle code for unsafe speed and 23-103 of the vehicle code for, that's the reckless driving. And that can become a misdemeanor or a felony, the felony portion, if you injure or kill somebody in a reckless driving incident, can become a felony charge. The training that we've sent our officers to, this was, we responded to this after we had the racing incident, illegal street racing incident on Glen Oaks and Andover. We've sent all the motor officers to organize street racing and street takeover training. All those officers have gone to modified exhaust and training on how to identify when a vehicle engine or parts have been modified, and the ability to send them to the bar state referee. I could tell you from the information we obtained, some of these cars are so heavily modified that if we issue a citation to send them to the state referee, the charges and fines are so hefty that they end up just selling their cars because they can't afford to pay for the penalties. The goal that we want to have, this is why I sent to the office, that we have sent the officers to the training. We can pick them off one by one, but it's hard once they reach 3, 5, 10,000 in number. Then we're just pushing them out of an area rather than having an impact. And then we just push them to another community. And that's what's happening right now. We like, as we get them one by one, send them to the state bar or the referee, we can deal with that car and that racing vehicle at that point, and then hopefully put an end to the possibility that they're going to be racing through our town. We are currently in discussions with there's an LAPD CHP, California Highway Patrol Task Force, specifically for street racing and street takeovers. We are currently in discussions with them on creating an MOU on our potential cooperation with them and participation by allowing some of our motor officers to be on this task force. And then if we were to, it becomes collaborative to the point where if we have a street takeover or a street racing incident in our town that we need assistance with by being a part of this task force, they would send their officers here to our city because we entered into a memorandum of understanding with them that we're all participating together. And that's what I have so far, if there's any questions.
Great, thank you, Lieutenant. Do any of our commissioners have any questions? Very nice presentation. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
I have a bunch of questions and comments, but I also know that I take up a lot of time, so I want to make sure we open it up for the other commissioners first. Okay,
Please
looks
go right
like
ahead.
okay, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. I feel like I'm getting to know you, Lieutenant, fairly well, although you haven't had a chance to really get to know me or any of us, simply because of the number of presentations that you've done over this past year. So I want to thank you for that. You're having an impact. Your willingness and other members of the staff's willingness to meet with the public has been incredibly powerful. So I want to thank you for that. Let me start with this. You said that there are 3 things. Let me find my list real quick. You said that there are 3 things that can be done, that are being done to address street racing. As a side note, I see sometimes there's a reference to illegal street racing. Let me start with this. Is there legal street racing in Burbank?
There is, and this is what is typically to be encouraged, is there's certain places where you can go, you have to actually pay fees and get permitted, but they're actually drag strip tracks or race tracks to get involved in what's called legal racing. What we don't want that to do is to be on our public streets.
Right.
On a street racing track, it's controlled, it's permitted, and there's safety involved. And there's safety personnel there for if there's a crash to deal with that problem. This is what's not happening on our city streets, is it's uncontrolled. And anybody from our public, from our community, could mistakenly, unbeknownst to them, walk into the middle of one of these illegal street races, and I think we know what happens as a result of that.
And for clarification, there is no legal street racing in Burbank?
No, there is not.
Okay, all right. So you made reference to education, enforcement, and engineering. Yes. And one of the things that I know has been very frustrating, I got a chance with Commissioner Kobian, with Together We Can, and with a number of community members, really appreciative of the work. One of the things that there's a lot of frustration about is community members want to make street racing and excessive speed stop. And there's a piece of it, I work in mental health, and I playfully say this, but as long as people have mental health issues, I have a certain element of job security in my life. I say that playfully because we can do what we can to manage it, but we can't make it go away. And so my concern is there a way through education, enforcement, engineering, are there any tried and true ways to stop street racing?
This is America, and we have a dedicated car culture, and we always have. We love our cars, and we love our muscle cars. So unfortunately, we need to control that. But ever since there was the first muscle car, somebody was breaking the speed limit. Can we 100% stop this? What I can control and can't control, I cannot. None of our officers can control the personal decision-making ability of every driver. It's when they decide that they are going to speed, and let's talk about excessive speeds, of double the speed limit, triple the speed limit, that I cannot control, because that can happen at any time. If I know what's going to happen ahead of time, if we have intelligence information or we find out through some of the social media platforms that are open to the public and we find that this incident's coming to Burbank, I can control that because we can send officers there and stop that. What I can't control is the one-offs, such as the one on Glen Oaks and Andover. Young drivers just decided they were going to race each other driving down Glen Oaks Boulevard, and the results are tragedy. So can we stop that 100%? I got to be honest with you. We cannot. Yeah. Can we do everything in our power to educate everybody on the consequences of that bad decision making? 100%. And that's what we're working hard to do. Get that information out there. And that's what our community members are doing, is they're now helping us get that word out there. And that's what we need to continue to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to emphasize it's not to minimize the issue, but it's to emphasize that we can and will continue to do everything we collectively can. The thing that's frustrating is that there may always be incidents that end up happening, but I appreciate the fact that we're doing everything we can to try to prevent this from happening. It's just frustrating to know that we can't just stop it completely. But as you mentioned, that is part of, unfortunately, that is part of our culture. Yes. Our car culture. So education, enforcement, and engineering. As a side note, I just want to share with everybody is last night and other meetings, I periodically put them on in the background, and my family members will listen in on them. And I think I'm kind of driving them nuts a little bit with it, but it also inspires a lot of conversations. And so there was actually from the presentation last night, there was a conversation that took place while we were on vacation, and it was I have a family member who actually happened to be, he wasn't in the class, but he happened to be present. He was a TA during one of the classes that was being presented by Burbank. And a comment that he made, which I thought was really interesting, I wanted to share with it here, is that he had he was aware of who was paying attention and who wasn't paying attention. And one of his concerns that he raised last night, it's the kids that aren't paying attention that we want to reach the most. So this is coming from an 18-year-old recent graduate. So I just wanted to lift that up, that there's an appreciation for the class, but there's also an awareness that the people that should be listening are not. And so I wanted to put that out there. There were also comments last night that I wanted to bring up here as well about mandatory, like identifying, tracking, keeping folks on a list of sorts to track frequent speeders, especially amongst teens and everything. Are there any legalities related to that, to be able to put somebody on a watch list for either excessive speeding or that we're afraid that they might start engage in excessive speeding? Is that even allowed?
Yeah, so to touch on that there's a lot of legalities that are going to be involved in that. First and foremost, I know there was a discussion about the schools sharing that information with the PD, giving access to a database. You got to remember with the database, there's a lot of rules and regulations that come with keeping a database. First and foremost, you have to identify what's going to be called criminal activity, and then it has to reach a certain threshold before you're keeping a database, and that has to be very controlled and confidential. We're also dealing with juveniles at the schools. Even more stringent regulations and policies regarding that. I don't think the community would be wise to start doing such a thing as keeping a database on juveniles for this information that can be abused, released out to the hacked, released to the public. However, it is something that there should or could be discussion about, but there are some legalities that would have to be discussed before that would ever be something capable of completing. Yes, and the DMV has a database on every violation where we cite somebody or arrest somebody for a traffic violation. There's a point system for the DMV before they'll suspend or revoke your license for dangerous or bad driving behavior. So on a DMV printout, the officers will have access to that. But from what I understood, is that this would be, from the conversation last night, would this be more of an information sharing from being bad driving behavior identified by non-police, non-sworn police officers, which you're going to have some issues with that as well.
Yeah, and as we know in behavioral health, the best predictor of future behavior is prior behavior.
Yes.
But the problem, again, that's frustrating is it doesn't necessarily stop the behavior in the first place. So the education piece is fantastic. Enforcement, you shared what happened in the joint activity between Burbank and Glendale, and you mentioned that Glen Oaks became a ghost town, which the message got out. So with that, I know that the police department has been doing a lot around social media to get these things out, especially like when vehicles are impounded. Those have an impact, and the actual post may not actually indicate much, but if we read through the comments to those posts, you're seeing the community respond to that. So we know that the message is getting out there. In your opinion, is there anything related to engineering that can stop street racing or stop excessive use of speed?
Now you're talking about funding. Remember, these things have to be paid for.
If you had all the money you had in the world, what?
If you had all the money you had in the world and you engineered every city street that way, I'm going to tell you from being in the traffic division for a long time, and I hear the opinions from a large portion of our community on a daily basis, you don't always hear the other opinions. And there's a lot of opinions that do not like all the traffic control device, very frustrated from getting from point A to point B that used to be a 5-10 minute drive is now a 30-minute drive, which is not always traffic congestion, but also traffic control devices. So there's areas where I think smart engineering is needed. The schools, the senior living centers, the elderly, daycare centers. I think these things need to be protected because we need to protect our community, especially those that would be at a disadvantage for bad driving behavior. So I think that's very important. However, there's other sections of the city where from moving, transporting items, or getting from point A to point B are very important. You could engineer everything, but then studies out there have shown, just to give you an example, everybody wants a stop sign at their intersection because they think that's going to get everybody to slow down. All you do when you put stop sign after every intersection is you frustrate drivers who are simply trying to drive down the street. So what they do is they don't slow down. They roll through the stop signs when they think nobody's coming from the other directions, and they accelerate from a high rate of speed from one stop sign to the next. So there's no perfect solution to this. However, smart engineering does help and will definitely prevent illegal street racing.
And I think where we're seeing the most impact as quickly as possible is around the education piece, whether it be in the school district, whether it be the public, the PSA campaign that's being put together. Commissioner Cobian's been working on that with Together We Can, and with Burbank Police Department, with the support of Burbank Water and Power and others. Really looking forward to seeing West Coast Customs step in because, as you mentioned when we started the comments, is that we're talking about car culture. So if we can tap into folks that are most invested and engaged in car culture in a public way, I'm hoping that can have an impact as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what that produces. So I've asked a lot of questions, so I'm going to turn it over to my fellow commissioners for now.
There we go. Commissioner Cobian.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Thank you, Lieutenant Former, for the presentation. Question, when you guys are doing this educational piece with BUSC, are they seeing videos like this, these graphic videos of car crashes?
They have some of the videos.
Some of the videos.
Not as graphic, but they do have access. We do show the car collisions because we want them to see what the consequences are of this dangerous driving behavior.
Yeah, and I would have to say that, thank you for doing that because that certain piece is very crucial and very important because it seems like it takes a certain amount of visual content to really register with these children because putting yourself psychologically in the state of a 19, what was it, 17 to 24, I believe that's the age range. Putting yourself in that psychological, understanding, and just a story I want to share with the commission and everybody here. My cousin's 19 years old. He's my best man at my wedding. So today we were picking up our suits, and we were in my car, and I drive a 2021 Camaro, it's 6.2 liters, about 480 horsepower. Wonderful car, it's my third one. I just love GM, I love the engineering. I drive like a grandmother, and my cousin, loves the car, and I asked him, because he drives a 1999 Toyota Camry. I told him, I'm like, if you had my car, what would you do with it? The first thing he says is I would drive fast. And I asked him, I'm like, what would make you want to do that? He's like, because the car has the ability to do that. So that was one thing. The other thing I asked him was, I'm like, do you drink and drive? He's like, no. I'm like, why? He's like, because my mom would kill me. So it seems like the perception towards street racing and the way they view DUIs and other topics, like it's interesting because street racing for some reason is not a big deal in that world. It's like, I'll get a ticket, I'll get the car impounded, but for a DUI, my parents would kill me, I'll go to jail, etc. So do you think that harsher legislation towards street racing would be a lot more impactful versus like make it as punishable as the DUIs? Would that be something that would help deter these kids from?
I do. And the prosecution side, legislators and prosecution are some of the stakeholders in this. So should it be tiered? Yeah. Do young adults make poor decisions? I think we can all agree yes. Is it good to hammer them initially on the first violation, or should it be tiered, and should there be some education behind that? Just to give you an example, there's a group called Street Racing Kills. Unfortunately, some of the schools are turned off by the fact that it says kills, but unfortunately that's a truth. It does kill, but it's actually very good. It's a nonprofit organization from a woman whose 16-year-old child was a passenger in a car during a street racing incident that passed away. So she's doing something about it and created this organization. They've actually entered into a system with the city of Los Angeles where some of these young offenders, first-time offenders for reckless driving, instead of sending them to the juvenile court to get fines and penalties, they do a deferred judgment to where they are going to send them to this educational class with Street Racing Kills. That's something we're interested in pursuing and having discussions about. The educational aspect of what the consequences are and what can potentially happen are going to pay off. As we mentioned before about predictable is preventable. If we know what the prior behavior is, if it doesn't change after you give them opportunities for education and understanding, should you have harsher penalties? Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. And is there any way the community can help? Because I know that we can't, I remember it was, I believe, Councilmember Frutos 2 years ago was when the pandemic first started. I reached out to you because the epidemic, the crazy street racing during the lockdown was absolutely insane. And I'd reached out to you and we had a conversation. I know visually, as a community member, we can't be there to take a video and take pictures because you guys have to be present too. But is there anything else the community can do to help in that respect?
I think the sharing of information is good. If we can identify the vehicles, because unfortunately, not your average citizen can issue a traffic citation, so the officers have to witness this information. If there's a criminal aspect, like a misdemeanor or felony crime involved, then yes, citizens can be involved and do citizens arrest under that nature. But just reporting the information is going to be different than actually detaining somebody. So sharing that information with us where we can actually get vehicle descriptions with license plates, that's enormous to us. Fantastic. It's very beneficial because we can identify these drivers and go back. And even if it's at the point where we can't file a complaint against them to file with the city attorney or district attorney's office, we can have conversations with them and let them know the community and the police see you and see what you're doing.
Oh, fantastic.
So sometimes that's impactful enough to get them to slow down.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Brusen?
Yes, thank you again for the presentation. Just kind of a follow-up to what Commissioner Hakobian and you were speaking about in terms of, educating as a first step, and then, if the behavior doesn't change, then there would be other types of consequences. And so I'm wondering if you can just share, and I don't know, if there are so many different variations, if it's feasible or not, but to share a few of what are the consequences for speeding and reckless driving here in Burbank, and is that prescribed by the city and city ordinances, or is that coming down through the state or even federal government? And are there sort of progressive consequences, whether that be a fine or the charge issued and that kind of thing? And I guess I'll start there because that's
Yeah,
that's a
so
lot.
the penalties on speeding are going to be, there's a basic fine, and these are done through the courts, right? So some of this information is going to be laid out in the vehicle code, and some of this information is done through the courts. And it's per county, so there can be differences. We're in Los Angeles County here. But understand that the police officers don't designate a fine attached to the citation that we issue for vehicle code violations. That is done through prosecution, through the court process. It is progressive as well. If you were to get 3 red light violations, your second and third violation within a given time period it's going to be a harsher financial penalty, fine amount. Criminally, it's on the basis of the crime. You don't take somebody's, you're not always going to be able to take someone's prior criminal history and introduce that in every prosecution case. But the penalties could be 1, 2, 3 years, and that's done by the vehicle code and the penal code. Those penalties, there's a minimum sentencing and there's a maximum sentencing. And there's the ability sometimes to reduce the crimes from a felony to a misdemeanor to an infraction. But those are done through the courts and through the negotiations between city attorney, district attorney, and the court.
Okay, and so a question, is there, when a lot of these are young people with cars that may be designated for their use, but are likely owned by their parents or a guardian or somebody like that. So how does it work in terms of, it's a young person that has, been speeding, and are the fines, consequences, charges, things like that, are they just assigned to the youth, or is there something in addition to that is then becomes the responsibility or consequence faced by the owner of the car?
And these are the conversations why it's important for the parents to have the conversations with their young drivers, especially if they're juveniles. Because remember, not all of them are going to have jobs, summer jobs or part-time jobs. Some of them are just strictly students or student athletes. So when they receive these citations or arrested, the violation's heavy enough to be arrested for a vehicle code violation. When they go to court and the penalties are assessed by the court, they got to remember who's ultimately going to pay them. It's usually going to be the parents. If you're paying for your juvenile child's car insurance, those fines are hefty upon certain violations. And the parents are going to be the ones that have to pay. If they want to let their young driver continue to drive, they're going to be paying very expensive premiums for their car insurance after certain violations occur.
Lieutenant, you were discussing about the consequences. Is there anything posted on that we have that's you do this is the possible consequence, like a short list, especially in regard to street racing?
We do. I actually thank you for reminding me that I left that out of the presentation. We worked with Burbank Water and Power actually to reach our community. Because with the utilities bill of water and power, we knew they had a large community audience for us. So we worked with them to release this information. It's in a newsletter. They do a quarterly newsletter that we put this information in, and they do flyers with their mailers as well. But we did release that information with them, and Commissioner Hagobian was very helpful with that. So it was a great project. And it turned out very nice. We had some help with the city computer graphic designer who did a fantastic job, and the information, I think, was very concise and to the point, but educational.
In our high school, was there a period of time when there was no, and I don't want to call it driver education, but no driver instruction? Is there anything currently now? We have you described what's going on right now. That sounds like not driver education in the fact of how to steer a car, but what to avoid as far as legal ramifications. Has there been a period of time when there has been nothing, and are we seeing a response to that now with the higher increase in street racing, for example? Is there, like for a couple of years ago, was there no education at all?
Right, so I can tell you, I personally can't speak intelligently about this because I'm not 100% familiar with the BUSD school curriculum, but I can tell you I do have knowledge that the traditional driver's training education that we would have went through when we were youth in high school, they stopped doing that and have transitioned to where they use a third-party contracted company, a driver education company, to actually teach these young members to drive. And these things are mandated through the DMV for them to get their learner's permit. But I know that it transitioned away from the high schools. Is there a correlation here? Possibly, but I haven't personally seen a study on this, so I don't want to say yes or no on that topic.
In the programs that we have in the high school now, I go back a few years. I had a 68 Camaro new. At that time, in the high schools, we had driver education for one, but we also had it was called The Movie. And it was a brutal movie. But it also, I think, left an impression in people that maybe you need to be a little bit more careful. Is there something, it's sort of like Scared Straight. Is there some kind of is there some part of the program that includes something like that?
Currently, no. Discussions with the schools, as far as the students, the parents, and school boards and faculty, they're a little wary of showing videos of that nature. I think we all know what red asphalt was, but that's something they were diverting away from that. So I can't tell you what they would be interested in having in that arena, but I know they wanted to steer away from that type of video.
Excuse me. Commissioner Ellman?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. And also in watching the council meeting last night. Now, I saw a lot of kudos with the BSD and the department on what we're doing, but yet it seems to pale in comparison what Mr. Chapman and my generation went through. The driver's education was a full semester.
Yes.
And then after you finished that, you went to driver's training. And you were in the trailer with the simulator, and then we tore up the streets and donated Plymouth Furies. But we were there for a full semester, and they actually taught us how to drive. And we're saying it's a priority, but we're not doing it. Everything, it seems to be like symbolic. It's like driver's education light, not the real full thing. And we talk about engineering technology. This can be fixed in 1 year. When I get in my car and I have the navigation on, it tells me I'm on Glen Oaks, and it says the speed limit is 35 miles an hour or 30, right?
Yes.
If the car knows what the speed limit is, why in God's name is it allowing me to do 85? And the reason is money. Corporations will not make money if cars like Camaros are not selling. So they allow this to go on. I'm getting a little bit too talky now. But I think there's a lot that can be done, but nobody really wants to do it hard. You guys are out there, but you have so much people, so much time that they're here, and there's just so much that can be done. But I think it has to be really fixed with technology, because I don't think people are going to change. I think once mankind got 2 horses and a rider on each horse, they raced because it's in human nature. And I don't think we can change people. And even when I was Mr. Chapman's, in our age, we had cars and we thought we were thrilled if we had 200 horsepower. But we had Lyons Drag Strip, Orange County, Irwindale, Pomona. We had places to race.
Yes.
And that doesn't exist anymore on the same scale. But I think for you, I mean, my question is, if you had unlimited budget, what's the perfect answer for your part of the puzzle?
I think you touched on it. I think having a captive audience, such as in a high school forum, making mandatory curriculum for that would be amazing for us to get the word out, because it's consistent, because it would be curriculum that would be approved by the school. Additionally, it's standardized. All the experts in traffic could weigh in on this for the state of California. We can make it a state initiative, but I agree with you. More can be done. And is that a good forum? Yes. Sending our young drivers out to random schools to pick up the information and learn the information. Maybe a study should be done to see if that's been effective or it's not effective. The other topic you talked about with your GPS telling you the speed limit, there's current legislation at Capitol Hill in DC talking about making the automakers responsible for coming up with that technology, but that can take years to come up with something that's reliable and works, because we all know when it doesn't work, lawsuits will come. So they need to find something that works well, and is reliable. But there is funding being discussed in Washington, Washington, D.C. about this very topic, using technology to control our bad habits.
Okay. Commissioner Liu?
First of all, thank you, Lieutenant, for going through this presentation. I do want to commend BPD for evidently taking steps even since, the unfortunate accident that happened late last year. And it's great. I remember the meeting that we had a presentation on this last year, and it's great to see the progress that has been made since then. So I really do appreciate it. I think just through this conversation that we've been having, it does seem like a theme that is coming up both on the education and the enforcement side is that the way to continue making progress is through a cumulative effort, like continue to hammering home on the education side. This is a really big deal. And then on the enforcement side, if the same driver is cited several times, that is a cumulative kind of move toward real action in terms of taking them off the streets, or, true disincentive for them to behave in that kind of way. I'd like to touch on both. On the education side, it's great to hear that the mindfulness training has already been acted, and that there was a lot of great feedback, and that you've also worked with Burbank Water and Power to get the message out to parents. To Commissioner Hakobian's point about, the kids thinking it's really not that big of a deal, you get a citation and then you move on with your life. It does seem like the education component is great in school, needs to be enforced and needs to expand, but then the conversation with the parents is also a big piece of it, right? And right now, are there materials that are being sent home with the kids? Like, is there a way, and maybe this is a larger conversation with the USD, but is there a way that the parents can sign off on the training and, sign off on getting the materials and having the tools to have those conversations with their kids and really understand the ramifications of both, the financial disincentives that you pointed out, but also the really terrible, consequences it can have if a crash did happen on their kids, as well as strangers that may be critically hurt in the process.
No, and I think those discussions should be had, but we do need to get more information out there, and the parent involvement that you're talking about would be amazing. Maybe there are local insurance companies, auto insurance companies, we could have discussions about the parents sign off or get involved in certain curriculum and can say they participated and there's a good driving record. Maybe there's a reduction in premiums. I mean, could there be an incentive behind this? I think there's a lot of things that the community can think about and come up with some pretty good ideas about how to get the involvement. But the parent involvement that you're talking about, I mean, to us, we would like to see more of that. Knowing what your child's doing, how they're driving, where they're going, that would be, that would be good for our entire community.
I completely agree. And I think what I'm trying to kind of drive home here is, yes, it's obviously on the children to understand what is going on. And at that age, the level of responsibility varies across a pretty wide spectrum. But it's also the responsibility of the parents as well. So to the extent that BPD can work on the communications through multiple channels, because ultimately the kids are the ones that need to
I'll let you finish.
Okay. I was just saying, ultimately, the kids are the ones that will be behind the wheel. But it does seem like so much of this is, as you said, an education piece. And the more that education can actually drive into, prevention, then the enforcement piece of it hopefully becomes a less awful task.
Yes. So the collaboration with BUSD was a big deal. I'm telling you, it was a big deal. In fact, Council Member Schultz, BUSD Board Member Char Talbot, and myself and John Paramo, within the week after this accident, and there was other behind-the-scenes calls that were being made as far as what we can do to reach out to the youth, as far as an educational campaign that will actually stick. So that is in still the second week of August, and it wasn't until the late spring of the following year that we actually were able to do the training. There was a lot of moving parts because there's a curriculum that's already in place for the school year. How can we be introduced into that curriculum? And I think it was related to health sciences. There had to be a syllabus. It had to be agreeable to BOSD, our folks, Lieutenant Fromer and his staff, and one of our detectives spent a lot of hours creating a syllabus that would actually be engaging, educational, and interactive. And the outcome was great, but there was a lot of heavy lifting behind it. So to your point, as far as parental engagement, the one ask that I had, and I said it right from the get-go, is that at the end of the training session, in fact, the first session, the assignment was to go home and just talk to your parents. When you were a kid driving, did anything bad happen? Did anybody get involved? Because everybody has a story. My story is there was 4 kids that went on ditch day and they all perished in Malibu Canyon. And sadly, I can only remember 2 names. Everyone has a story. It may have been in high school or just after high school, so how can that resonate? So the traditional driving that we had, the older people there had, education that was mandated, schools phased out. I don't know what the backstory is. There's probably an expense associated with it. They wanted more enhanced curricula that was more meaningful than driver's ed, and it is problematic. So we're part of the solution, but the BUSD, the engineering side, certainly City Council, all of that, and to Councilman Elman's point, is that the industry itself is not helpful. Tonight you go home and you will see a car racing an airplane. You will see a car racing a motorcycle. And what is that telling your drivers? Young drivers, it's problematic. In the cars that we drive today, in a low-end car is a high-performance car. So it's just going to be a hard grind moving forward. They have been relentless, but every chance we get is, especially with students, you talk about driving. Just talk about driving so there's not a bad outcome.
No, that's great. I thank you for the clarification there. And I think having started in the past 6 to 8 months, it seems like there's really great momentum behind that. On the enforcement side, when you spoke to an increase in violation for distracted driving, have you seen that kind of result in repeat offenders, if you will, and in terms of citations on that front, like to the point of having these citations be cumulative in disincentivizing? Have these increased citations kind of resulted in seeing repeat offenders on distracted or speeding.
Yeah,
More so
unfortunately,
than in the
it's
past.
almost impossible to get drivers to put their phones down. So several repeat offenders on this topic. But it is a huge distraction while driving. They're taking their attention and vision off the roadway, and we're seeing a lot of accidents because of that.
And apologies, this is just my understanding of the law here. For like distracted driving, is it kind of cumulative in terms of like points with the DMV until they get their license revoked? Or is this just, they get fined each time? Is it?
So there are fines on each one, and there's a certain threshold to get the points, but I could get you that information. I have to
Okay.
get that from the court.
Perfect.
That can lead to
Right.
suspension. Right,
Okay,
so when it
great.
was initially instituted, there was no point, and then over time, when things continue to be a problem, the state and the legislator will decide, okay, these types of violations will need a point attached to it to kind of reinforce the idea that if you continue this dangerous driving behavior, you could lose your driving privilege. So, but I could get you that information.
Awesome, thank you. And one final question, this is a little bit more specific. To the point of traffic enforcement efforts, the speed display trailers, can you just speak a little bit more to that and the effectiveness of them? Have you kind of seen, placing them on a street over time, the speed kind of decreasing because you have that data to kind of review and back up? And what is kind of the process of where you're placing them, how long you're placing them, how many you have? I'm just wondering, because it seems like a pretty relatively low lift kind of effort, and to see if there's like any positive results happening.
Yeah, so there's an immediate effect by getting people to slow down when they see that. It's visual and it's instant. People see it, it flashes at you, it tells you you're speeding, and people will slow down. Unfortunately, when it's not followed by enforcement, people realize there's no cop coming. So then after a few weeks, they will ignore it. Okay, so it has to be followed by enforcement. The information that we obtain from that is invaluable. So we use that, the traffic engineer uses that. We can tell how many cars are driving down that roadway, how many are speeding, how many are following, adhering to the posted speed limit. But it's great information. It gives you dates and times. So I could tell 7 days a week, every hour of the day, I could tell where my biggest problems are, and that helps us focus our efforts. Working with Public Works has invested in doing solar-powered permanent signs that can be affixed to various poles. And you may have seen that at the northern and southern end of the city, but that information is working well to show that the speed limit has been reduced with our enforcement, education, and with the engineering.
That's great, thank you.
Good. I think Commissioner Fruzen had a comment, and then we'll wind up with Commissioner Coombs here.
Okay, this is just a follow-up on the traffic safety education in the high school. So I think you had mentioned it was at Burroughs High School and Burbank High School currently. Are there, and there were plans to expand it. Does that include the other two BUSD high schools or any other local private schools?
So there was immediate interest from Providence, which is a private school. Immediate interest from them. We're now, we've opened discussions with them as well. And to expand it to the different grade levels. So it's very positive. As the chief mentioned, there's a lot of work that went into this. The feedback has been nothing but positive, and we want to build on that. We really want to build on that and use these as an opportunity to get that education out there. I think we are going to see the results down the road with the drivers that have been through these types of programs.
Yeah, and to that point about, if you've already created this resource, in this case, a training, I know a lot of work also went into the BWP flyer that went out. And so I'm wondering if that, I don't know if it would need to be adapted in any way. I'm guessing not, maybe. Is there a way to have that distributed through BUSD to all the BUSD families as well? Just to the point of, just one more point of engagement with the parents and guardians
Absolutely.
of the BUSD students, since it's already made. And then the last thing was, again, just speaking to the disincentives, disincentivizing folks. And I'm wondering, I do see periodically on the BPD social media that cars do get impounded. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to, is that something that happens after many violations, or is that something that happens frequently? This would be anecdotally now at this point, but do you see, does that finally seem to change behavior of kind of repeat offenders, or is even that not, that seems like a pretty, that or getting your license revoked seem like kind of the most severe, consequences that would happen, these types of things. So I'm just wondering if that seems to have an impact or not.
It's very impactful because the fine on that is paying the fees of a 30-day storage on top of the impound fees and release fees. The fine is hefty, and that's the point. On a reckless driving incident, we can, there's a lot of misinformation that goes around out there, and unfortunately, not everybody's familiar with it, but we can, on the first reckless driving incident, if we arrest somebody for reckless driving, we can impound their car for 30 days. There doesn't have to be a progressive 2, 3, 4 violations before that happens. However, it's a little bit tricky because the car, if it's registered to the driver, it can be stored for 30 days. Unfortunately, if that car is not registered to them, say as their parent needs it to get to work, it's not something that we would typically hold for 30 days, giving the parent the ability to still work. We're reasonable in that aspect. However, there are times when it could be registered to the parent, and yet the juvenile, it's their full-time car, and we can prove that and show that. We would hold the car for 30 days.
Good. Commissioner Coombs?
Thank you, and thank you for your time with this as well. I know you've been at this before we even started asking questions a year ago, before the incidents that we're talking about. Remind me, was there a parent that was charged in the incident from last August?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
However, I could get that information for you. I can get you a little bit more detail.
Great. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly. I was kind of racking my brain about it as well. This is just a suggestion, thinking off the top of my head. I really appreciate the focus on education. There sounds like there are some technology pieces that are kind of in the pipeline, but they're down the way. I heard you mention that the speed indicators are useful, followed up by enforcement, and you mentioned that Public Works is looking at putting in speed indicators. Will those be followed up with enforcement as well, or are they just going to, because they're just going to be posted there permanently, correct?
No, followed by enforcement.
Oh, okay.
The two that we have some on Riverside and we have some on Glen Oaks Boulevard.
Great.
The goal is to strategically put them where we're having speeding issues. We don't want it to become, just noise, right? Just clutter that people aren't going to pay attention to. We want it to be beneficial. We want to have a positive outcome with this. It's followed by enforcement.
Great.
If you drive down Riverside, if you drive on Glen Oaks, you're going to find officers.
Great. And this is a suggestion, thinking outside the box a little bit. I don't know exactly what all the policies are with the department around ride-alongs, but with the education piece, the personal contact that an individual has, the personal positive contact that an individual has with somebody from Burbank Police Department helps both the department and some of the events that we've been talking about. It also helps the individual, and if they put it on social media, that's a bonus because it spreads beyond that. I don't know if there's an age requirement, but what if individuals that were, I don't know if this can be done if they're under the age of 18, but what if individuals that had some sort of a traffic violation, an excessive speed violation or something, if they were invited to participate or maybe mandated to participate in a ride-along with an officer for a part of a shift, so that way they can see firsthand what it's like to enforce this. I don't know if this is something that's ever been considered by the department.
Not that I can recall, certainly with the Burbank Police Department, and I can't recall it in my former life with LAPD. When we're referencing juveniles, we're in a whole new dynamic.
Right.
So a ride-along, you're still riding along with a police officer who is on duty and responds to calls.
Right.
So I'd like you thinking out of the box, but we may have to think about something else. So
Sure.
I think it could expose the city, and I like the educational component of it, but I'm not sure how that looks.
Okay. Something
Okay.
that'd be good to explore later on.
Yeah.
Our last question,
Just
Commissioner.
going back, just to go along with what Commissioner Combs says. If I'm going back in my memory, didn't the courts also take, people who were having problems, issues with lots of speed, that they would sometimes be sent to the ER or to the coroner to see what was going on there? The results of
Yeah,
accidents?
you're really dating yourself.
Hey,
I mean,
was
you
there,
really are.
But my memory's working.
Yes, and I think someone thought that was a little too harsh, but yes, especially related to DUI or arrest where there was an injury, is that was part of the educational process associated with whatever fine penalty they got.
Yeah. Also, I would like to say that we call ourselves the media capital of the world. My feeling is a lot of this is associated with the Fast and Furious movies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. There was a lot of interest this evening. And I want to mention that there's a number of people on our commission who are quite involved with this. It takes a village. It's not just our police department, it's not just the commission, it's not just the school, it's everybody working together. And we appreciate the efforts that you've put into that and what you've put in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And thank you personally from me for your engagement and involvement in traffic safety. I've seen it, I've worked with a few of you, and please don't hesitate to contact me with any ideas or information. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hey, Commissioners, can I give you an update before Captain Cornelius walks up? Come on up, Tom. So I reached out to Gina on Commissioner Coombs' question as far as the number, and because I was thinking about it, our number now is 6 commissioners, so that formula is going to change. So it's 2. So 7 commissioners, 3, and then with her resignation, it would be 2. So just for point of information, and you got a gold star for asking a legal question, by the way. So I had to text her, and so that's the answer. So once we're back up to 3 or 7, then you get 3.
Great.
Okay.
I'd like a certificate, please.
Yes. Oh, yes. It will. It will. You'll get a good one. Thank you.
All right, next is our presentation, discussion, and possible recommendations on the department's training, procedures, and processes with regard to school safety. And we have Captain Cornelius to give our presentation this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. My name is Adam Cornelius. I'm the Patrol Division Captain for the Burbank Police Department. As you said, I was invited here tonight to give a presentation about school safety and the police department's training and response protocols. This is a broad topic. I'm going to try and focus on what I think are the essential areas, and then I'll wrap it up for any questions you may have. For those of you who were present at or saw the joint session last night, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is this is probably going to be a rehash of what you saw yesterday. The good news is this is my second time in 2 nights, so I might be a lot better this time. I don't know. We'll have to see. Thank you. So, getting started, I'm going to talk about the Patrol Division first, because this is the essential component of any of our response protocols. The Patrol Bureau is, simply put, we are the first responders. We are a 24/7 operation. We never close. Weekends, nights, holidays, pandemics. We are here. We are out there in the community responding to calls and doing proactive work in the field. Specific to the schools, we do proactive patrols around the school areas, around the schools in the city. Our beat officers know the schools that are in their beats. There's an expectation that they are conducting proactive checks of their schools when they have downtime during the day, and they're documenting that. We also do focus proactive patrols, extra patrols, or area checks based on information we've received, whether it's a request from somebody in the community about a concern, a request from the school about a concern, an upcoming event that we expect to draw a lot of people, like a graduation or a football game. We are targeting those areas to have extra presence there. The Traffic Bureau, you just heard an extended presentation from Lieutenant Fromer. He runs our Traffic Bureau. I won't belabor that point, but they are also assigned in sectors similar to our beat officers, where they have schools that are assigned in their assigned areas, and there's an expectation that they are taking ownership of what's happening at those schools, that they have introduced themselves to the staff there, and that they are present, especially during the problematic times where we have drop-off, pickup, problematic driving from students, problematic driving from parents, and they're taking efforts to enforce things there. So our patrol division has general responsibility citywide. We work with the school district, but we also have a broader overall focus and responsibility to the city. Last year alone, we managed about 39,000 calls for service. That's just calls for service. That does not include proactive initiated contact, so we're busy. The department does have an element that is specifically focused on working with the schools, and that's our school resource officers. They're assigned to the juvenile detail in our detective bureau. They're the first point of contact and a liaison to the school district. They have investigative responsibilities for investigating crimes that are reported on campus. They also investigate suspected child abuse reports. Typically, these are coming from mandated reporters, whether that's school district employees, hospital staff, therapists, social workers, and they're connecting with Department of Children and Family Services to manage those cases. They handle about 250 of those reports per year. They also do investigative work with criminal threats. Typically, these days, we're seeing these in the form of social media. And where things are coming up, there's concerning posts being made, people in the community are being made aware of it, the district's being made aware of it, and they're reporting that to us. The school resource officers are often one of the first points of that investigation and starting to dig into those threats and vet them out and try and identify who our person is. The school resource officers are also part of a threat assessment program. It's called a SAFE-T, which is a student assessment focalized evaluation team. They began that in partnership with the school district and DMH in 2019. It was through the Director of Student Services, the MET team, our Juvenile Bureau, and the SROs. In that time, they basically have been doing reviews of reports regarding concerning behavior, provocative statements, things that may or may not have elements of a crime, but are concerning and something that needs to be looked at as a preventative measure. In those 3 years, they've done a little over 30 of these assessments. The vast majority of these result in referrals for counseling, connection with services for the family to help them manage their child. There have been a few rare occasions where things have been provocative enough and concerning enough to rise into a criminal threat. We've had 3 of those incidents where we have had to make an arrest, but these were very provocative cases. These were individuals who had kill lists. They had lists of named intended victims. The threats that were made were very, very direct, and there was no choice but to take immediate action on that. For the remainder, though, it is an ongoing case management through their resources with Department of Mental Health, DCFS, Family Services Agency, whoever the team decides is probably going to be the best fit for that particular incident. So looking more into mental health evaluation, talking about things that we can do for prevention of incidents, our MET team plays a role. We've discussed them before. They're a co-response model police officer, Department of Mental Health clinician. They also have an analyst assigned. They have specialized training and experience beyond what our patrol officers have. The real strength with the MET team is in case management and follow-up services. So any one of us are trained, qualified, and authorized to make a mental health detention out in the street if it meets the criteria. But in patrol, we're going to manage that call for service, and we're moving on. We may never see that person again. Where the MET team has its strength is in that follow-up. I kind of refer to them as our mental health detectives. They're going to see those cases come across, and part of their role is to do follow-up with these individuals and make sure that they are getting the services they need, maintaining their pathway, or that there are adjustments being made if we need to make adjustments. They work hand in hand with the school district in response to calls. They will come out. They are there to help for assessments, sometimes just assistance, interventions. A lot of the times it's as simple as a sit-down conversation. Sometimes just having that third party who hasn't been part of the issue come from the outside and sit down and talk with students. Sometimes that's all it takes. And they get to have their chance to discuss their problems and work on a path forward. Other times it's about connecting the students with services that MET may have direct access to. Again, sometimes it's about connecting the family to resources because maybe they're struggling with coming up with an effective plan for how to manage this. And again, sometimes things get so provocative that it calls for a detention, for a mental health evaluation by a medical facility. Where Met has another advantage here is in their connections and their contacts. Any one of us working patrol on the street corner at 3 in the morning, if we detain somebody for a mental health evaluation, there's likely one option. That's probably going to be a county facility, which is qualified to manage it, but it may not be the best fit for that person, especially when we're talking about juveniles. So Met has a lot of contacts in this field where they can find the right fit, work with the parents, work with their insurance companies, and find the best fit for them instead of putting them into a one-size-fits-all where they may get marginal care. So we're trying to find the best fit, and that's where Met's strength is. So I discussed some of our units and our people and things we look at to prevent incidents. I want to talk about now about some things we do to prepare for when something does happen. First thing I want to talk about is the equipment that we have that we maintain in our inventory. Number one of those is going to be site plans. You'll see a map on there. We have digital site plans of every facility in the school district. Every school, every office. It is a map, it is the surrounding streets, it's the buildings numbered, it's the rooms numbered, it's the infrastructure on campus that we need to know about. That is in our computer network. Anything connected to our computer network, we can pull it up. It's a couple clicks of the mouse. So our watch commander, our dispatchers, our command post, the patrol cars, the officers can download it to their phones so when they're away from the car, maybe on the facility itself, they have it available to them so that we're oriented to what people are talking about. Nobody knows a campus as well as the people who work there. And when somebody is in a moment of crisis, in a panic, calling and screaming that they're in building 2, room 205, I want my officers to be able to know exactly where that is compared to where they are and how to get there. And that gives them the tool. We also have keys to all BUSD facilities. The school resource officers maintain those, make sure they're updated. So in a critical incident, we're not going to be standing around waiting for somebody to find us keys to get into a locked door. We're going to have them. We have medical kits. It is a best practice throughout the state that our patrol officers, every sworn officer is trained and equipped for trauma care. Not first aid kits, traumatic injuries, gunshots, stab wounds, severe injuries from vehicle accidents. We have the training and the equipment to address those. The officers have individual kits with medical equipment to treat an individual, a single tourniquet, chest seals, gauze, other tools. We also have larger kits that we have staged in vehicles in the patrol fleet. We're expanding that, and we're always increasing the amount of inventory we have out in the field. We've also pre-staged medical kits at the schools. This started in response to assessments from the Parkland shooting and the Saugus shooting. And we made the decision that we want to put extra medical equipment at the schools. So we had 2 kits to begin with, one at each of the high schools. We've expanded that to cover middle schools. We're going to keep expanding that to cover additional schools in the district. Not with the expectation that the teachers are going to start going to work on kids and trying to treat gunshot wounds, but then when we are there and we have trained personnel there, as soon as it's safe to do so, we can start going to work and start saving lives in those golden minutes that we're losing critical time if we're not doing something. We have entry tools. You'll see a picture of, looks like a little backpack with some tools in it. These are tools that are going to get us in through locked doors, through windows, through chains and padlocks. It's in a backpack type kit so the officers can carry it with them and go and have their hands free. We have those in the vehicles in the patrol fleet. We're continuing to expand the numbers in there too. Looking at emerging technology, I'm going to steal a little bit of the chief's thunder, but there is a technology system out there called GunSense. They're in a very early phase of development, but it's a weapons detection and reporting platform. I'm not a tech guy. They say they're in the alpha test phase. I've heard of beta testing. I don't know exactly what the difference is, but mostly they're doing a proof of concept. So they've connected up through the chief. We're going to have a training day in the near future where we're going to bring their equipment out and we're going to put it through the ringer and test drive it and see how it works. Or if it doesn't work, where they need to make some improvements to make it workable for us and maybe for the school district. Bottom line is we're always looking for things. We're always looking to leverage technology. We're always looking for something that can help us do our job better. And we're out there actively looking for that at all times. So speaking of doing our job better, the next component of that in preparing is training. We have a history of partnership with the school district in training. We go back years of doing collaborative training, us working with them, us working on their campuses, and engaging with their staff. It's a valuable opportunity for both of us to improve, share our experiences and our perspectives, because sometimes we may have different perspectives, different views of the same challenge, and it's good for us to understand. Coming from the cop perspective, there are times that I may consider a course of action that for the school is a problem, because I don't know their policies and some of the laws that govern how they do business. So COVID did throw a monkey wrench into some of our historical practices of doing live training, face-to-face training with them or on their campuses. We are navigating our way through that, and we're continuing to move, but we're working through it. The first step in this is we do annual meetings with the school district, the district superintendent, his command staff, the chief and his command staff. We get together, we meet, we talk about the upcoming school year, challenges that we expect to face, events that may be coming up, issues that they've had, what our responses are going to be. One of the most important parts of that is we exchange information directly. So now I've met the principals, I've met the superintendent, we have each other's contact information, so when Dr. Hill needs to get a hold of Captain Cornels, when there's a need, he can reach me directly, and vice versa. We're not stuck trying to navigate each other's bureaucracies to find each other. It makes things move a lot faster when we need to make a decision. We also do presentations to the district staff. We have district-wide training that we've done specifically related to active shooter events. We have members of our SWAT team and our training cadre come out. Presentations district-wide during their meetings with all their administrative staff and principals. We also do individual school sites, do the high schools individually, the middle schools individually. Typically, we do elementary schools grouped in packages by geography to make it a little more manageable. We also do our department training on the school facilities. We really like to leverage the time when they are off campus, when they're out of session, because it gives us an opportunity to get into that environment to train. We do department-wide training on active shooter on the campuses. This is all of our department, all our sworn officers going through the training days. There's a lot of value in us being on the ground, on the campus, moving through the campus, going through some of the less traveled areas, and building that familiarization in our heads before the emergency. I want my officers to have been there, moved through it under stress, seen the place, seen where they're going, before we have to do it under pressure. Our SWAT team also trains on a regular basis on the school campuses. That builds on that familiarity. There's also an extra advantage in the fact that we are a collateral duty team. So our members of our SWAT team are coming from patrol, coming from the detective bureau. These are the folks who are going to be the first responders when something happens. So I want them to have that extra level of familiarity with the campus. We also recognize we don't do this by ourselves. We train regularly with the fire department, working with them on the campuses, moving with us to work on rescues, treatments, and evacuations. We also know that if we have a major incident at one of our campuses, we're going to be relying on mutual aid. We're not going to be doing this by ourselves. So we have other partner agencies in the region. We're part of Area C in mutual aid, which is Burbank, Glendale, and then most of the western end of the San Gabriel Valley. So we go train on their campuses. We have them come train here. Prior to the pandemic, we had a 3-day training course and exercise at Burbank High School. Involved police agencies, fire departments from our mutual aid area, where we were on campus for 3 days working together. So now when they need to come here to help us, they know. So training on these topics is comprehensive, it's ongoing. We never stop. You're never going to see me come in front of you and say, July 20th, 2022, we did it. We're done, we've crossed the finish line, we've got it. It's a constant cycle. There's always room to improve. There's always ways we can sharpen our edge. We can always find better ways of doing things. The more repetitions, the better. So this never stops. At the most informal level, we leverage our roll call training time before every shift. My officers, lieutenants, and sergeants have 20, 30 minutes together in a room, talk about what's going on in the city, talk about what they're going to be doing, get their beat assignments, and do some training. And so we leverage that for informal training, doing some tabletop exercises, talking about the what ifs of when they're going to respond somewhere. They debrief incidents that either have happened here or things we've heard about elsewhere, talk about where we did well, where we could have done better, equipment or training that would have helped us do better, and so we can build forward from that. So to speak about what we're doing leading up to the next school year, we have some current and pending training. Recently, we did patrol response exercises. So what we did last week for 2 days, I had the SWAT team out at Burroughs High School. They arrived there, they set up several active shooter scenarios, and then put in blind calls to dispatch. Said it's a SWAT team, send me 3 officers. Have them meet the team, we'll tell them what's going on when they get here. The officers showed up, they were told you're in a training exercise, drop your gear, here's your training equipment, here's your scenario, go. It was unannounced, they had no forewarning. The value in this is this lets me know where we are. Okay, it's one thing to show up to a training day that's been pre-announced where we've told you what we're doing, we've told you what equipment to bring, you've had a chance to get your mind right about how you're gonna do things, versus I just got dropped into this and now people are observing me, assessing me, and I'm under pressure. I wanna see how we do. So we did that for 2 days. What I saw I was happy with. In any sort of tactical response under pressure, there's always going to be fine tuning. There's always going to be things that we could have done better, somewhere where we zigged when we should have zagged. But I'm confident in our mindset. Our officers, whether it was 4 officers, 3 officers, 2 officers, 1 officer, they didn't hesitate, they didn't delay. They went directly to the threat and they stopped the threat. And that's what I wanted to see. Anything beyond that, I can fine tune it. But I'm confident in our mindset, I'm confident in the officers that if they get called tonight, they know what to do and they're going to do it. So to build on that, at the end of this month, we're going to be taking another campus for a week, and we're going to be doing 1-day sessions of directed training and active shooter response for the entire department. Every sworn officer is going to go through that. So it's going to give us another look at another school district campus, the ins and outs of that, and give us a chance to build on our responses from last week. We're grateful for the opportunity and the partnership with the school district. It's a huge opportunity for us. It serves them, and we look forward to keep doing this on an ongoing basis. So as I get to the end and prepare to take some questions, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Uvalde. This is at the forefront of everybody's mind. I know it drives a lot of the discussion around school safety, drives a lot of concern, so I felt it's understandable, I feel a duty to address it. At the chief's recommendation, I checked the distance. It's a little over 1,300 driving miles from Burbank, California to Uvalde, Texas. So people may ask, what does what happened there have to do with us? And this is my answer. Nobody knows all the facts of what happened there. Nobody in this room anyway. The facts are coming out, but the picture is constantly evolving, and it'll evolve more over time. I don't need to know all the facts to tell you that there were failures there. The bottom line is we failed. When I say we, I don't mean Burbank PD. When I say we, I mean law enforcement in general. And so 1,300 miles away, people in the community here, it doesn't matter that that was 1,300 miles away. They see people who wear a uniform that looks like this, and they failed. So there's concerns there. I want to address some of that. Number one, I want to look at some comparing and contrast equipment. I've seen the photos, I've seen the videos from that incident. The officers appear to be modernly equipped. They have contemporary equipment. They have the tools to get the job done, much like we have here. Speaking about training, by all accounts, they had gone through recent active shooter training, much like what I discussed and what we're doing here. They knew what to do. So where you're going to see the difference is in mindset. We have a saying that you have to have the skill and the will to go address the threat. And the mindset is what matters. If you look at the comparison of a suburban police department in the greater Los Angeles area to a small rural agency in the south, there's differences. I can't speak to Uvalde, I've never been there, but I, my chief, and other members of the department have worked and trained around the country, including rural, small agencies in the south, and the mindset is very different. The operational tempo is very different. The expectation of activity and initiative and drive is very different. So you get a different performance from people. Here in the greater LA area, things are much faster. There's a lot more going on. There's a much higher expectation of initiative and proactive work to resolve situations at the lowest level, as opposed to waiting for direction. We look at experience. I can't speak for sure, but I'm gonna leverage I'm gonna put out an estimate that you could do a 20-year career in a 6-person school district police department in the rural South, rise to the rank of chief, and have never managed a truly critical incident. So if you haven't been put in that spot, if you haven't had to make life and death decisions with limited information, under pressure for time, you're going to be severely challenged when that gets dropped in your lap. And it's going to take somebody who has a very strong sense of leadership, very strong drive to successfully resolve that. If you've had a history of low energy, low expectation police work, that may not happen. I want to tell you, Burbank PD is not the busiest agency in LA County, but I know you do follow our social media feeds and you see what we've been doing. The expectation here is much different. Our people are getting tested every single day. There's a sliding scale of what we're doing, but we're managing field emergencies every day. We're responding to critical incidents on a regular basis. We assess these immediately. We debrief them. We have very honest and open assessments where we're looking at what we did well, what we could do better, and things we need to do to improve our performance the next time. We affirm strong performance and we correct deficiencies. And that's a very tight feedback loop. From the line officers up, we've developed an understanding of what the priorities are and the expectations for taking the initiative to resolve a critical incident. So if you were to unplug the Uvalde incident, drop it into Burbank, I'm going to tell you, you would see a very different response. It would be much more dynamic, much more aggressive. We're not going to hesitate. We're not going to delay. We're going to take immediate action to stop the person who's murdering children. And I want to assure you, I want to assure the community of that. If something like this happens, it's going to be a bad day. There is no good outcome to one of these events. But I want to assure you that we are as prepared as we possibly can be. We have the equipment, we have the training, and most importantly, we have the mindset to go in there and take aggressive action to stop that threat. Our folks know what to do, and they've shown that in our recent events. So safety and security for the school district and for us, it's like training. You're never really done. You can't ever sit back and take your foot off the gas and say, okay, we've got it all, we've done it. That breeds complacency, and complacency breeds failures. So I always encourage the school district and our officers, we've always got to be looking for where we could do better. What could we improve? And when the chief talks about leveraging technology, that's part of it. For the school district, they're always looking at their infrastructure. What could they do to make things a harder target without being imposing and offensive? So they have a balance to strike there. But it is a constant grind to not be complacent, especially when nothing's happening. It's easy a week or two after a critical incident to be very energized, very excited, and drive forward to prepare. It's harder 6 months from now when nothing's happened to keep that energy, but that's my job, to keep our folks energized. That's the chief's job, and we understand that, and we recognize that moving forward. So on that note, I'll be happy to field any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Captain. That's a lot of information. I do have a question. We were talking about the elephant in the room. In comparison, in our school system, we do not have a separate school security outside of the police department. Is that correct?
That's correct. The school district does not have a separate police agency.
It starts with SROs and
Correct, yeah.
goes on.
The Burbank City Police Department provides the police services for the school district.
Following through, there seem to be some issues in Texas that with the command structure. Is that very clear here? You mentioned
Yes.
something about Dr. Hill giving a call over to you back and forth. Who calls if there's an issue? Someone calls 911? Or do you have to have it from some response from the administration of the school district, or how does that work?
So if there's an emergency, somebody should call 911. It's going to go direct to us, and we are authorizing, and we're taking over. We're going to be running that incident. We're not going to wait for a school district administrator to authorize us to take action. So when you speak about the incident in Uvalde, that's one of the problems I discussed last night is command and control. Command control and communications are always the difficult part of critical incidents. And something I've witnessed, something the chief has witnessed with some of these smaller rural areas is you have, I would call it jurisdictional friction, where for whatever reason you have a lot of competing agencies that have been set up that don't necessarily communicate well together. And when you show up on scene, what you see is we had a response, a lot of officers from different agencies. I don't know if they're able to communicate with each other. I don't know what kind of situational awareness they had when they were on the way of what was actually going on. You had calls going to a dispatch center for one agency. I don't know if that information was being shared out. And then you had confusion about who's in charge. When you have somebody who's the chief of an agency at a location in their jurisdiction and they're saying, well, I didn't consider myself to be in command. Well, who was? And that's the problem, because then you see they lost momentum, things stalled, and there was nobody who was clearly in charge to push the gas pedal and get that thing moving again. And that's what needed to happen. So there was a lot of delay and hesitation because I think there was a lot of uncertainty about what was happening and who was in control. But you're not going to see that here. The Burbank Police Department and the city is very centralized. The Burbank Police Department's command structure is very clear. Our communication with our mutual aid agencies is very clear. We exercise that on a routine basis. We can all jump to the same radio channels. And they know when they come here that they need to check in with somebody from our agency because this is our incident. And we're going to give them their tasking and their assignments. They're not just going to self-deploy and get stuck.
When we have our command staff in Burbank, if for some reason there had to be additional outside forces, we occasionally do this already with share services with Glendale or other cities. Who's in charge? Does it remain in charge of our Burbank command staff, or is there a higher level that we have to go to like if sheriff get involved?
I'm going to say 99% of the time, if it's occurring in the city, it's us. We are in charge. We are as what we would call the incident commander for that incident. The other resources that are being requested from other agencies, they are going to be reporting to us and under our control. There may be some outliers, especially when things considered instances at the airport, where there may be some jurisdictional issues there where somebody else is going to be in charge. The federal government may have some jurisdictional authority there. That would be the outlier. The other outlier might be things on the freeway, where things may fall under the Highway Patrol's command or ours, depending on if it's a traffic incident or a criminal incident. But 99% of the time, that is going to be us. We're going to have operational control of that incident.
Can I weigh in?
Of course, sir.
So I've been involved in a number of these things, and if there's a federal component, let's say there's a terrorist act, is that we may have a unified command that will ultimately result in us being a subordinate role. But there's a declaration of a change of command. It is declared. And I've done that a number of times, and where it wasn't the incident commander, but I would ask, okay, who am I working for? Who is the incident commander? Especially when chiefs would show up and they go, I'm here. I said, am I working for you? I'm working for you, because that's my direct point of contact. So in this region, and Captain Cornelius provided a kind of a clear org chart, if we will. It is how we operate in this region. When you go outside of the region, especially the flyover states, they just operate differently. And it's, I'm not minimizing their skill sets. It's just they don't have the exposure that we have had in the metropolitan area. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. I suspect that there are some other questions on the commission here. You want to start, Mr. Ellman? Mr. Ellman?
I want to stay on the subject of command and control. Who is the incidents commander? Basically, the question is, who is the incident commander?
So the answer is that depends. And sometimes that first officer on scene is going to be the incident commander until they get relieved. As more resources show up, we may have a ranking officer, a sergeant may show up and tell them, I'm taking command and directing more resources. That incident grows beyond the span of control of that sergeant. As a watch commander, there were times I unplugged from the station, I went out and took command. Typically, it's going to land at the lieutenant level for most of the incidents we see in Burbank. That's usually about as high as it's going to go. Expanded incidents, like I would say our mobilization for response to the civil unrest in 2020, we had captains as the incident commanders because of just the span of control of the operation, because we had the entire department deployed. But for the most part, what you're going to see is on a smaller incident, typically a sergeant is going to be an incident commander. If it grows a little larger, a lieutenant. Something like a active shooter at the school with this level of involvement, most likely, it may take some time to develop that chain of command, but most likely you're going to land with a captain being an incident commander. The incident command system is flexible and it's scalable. So it depends on the incident.
When the SWAT team is called in, is the SWAT commander basically in charge at that moment?
No.
Or, okay, who is
So
in
you're going to
charge?
have, so the SWAT commander is going to be a component of that, but typically there is a tactical mission within that incident for the SWAT team, and the SWAT commander will be in charge of that. But there is a lot going on beyond just that tactical mission. You're going to have issues with perimeter control, investigators, other support services that are responding. So we're still going to have an incident commander separate from that. The SWAT commander will be the commander of that tactical element, but there's a larger overall picture than just that when we have the whole team deployed.
So if the whole team is deployed and the SWAT commander determines I need patrol officers on the west side of the perimeter, it goes to the incident commander?
Correct.
And he says, yeah, you're right, and they're sent to that location?
Correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Let me give you a really recent example from 0400 this morning. So we did a SWAT warrant service, and you've probably seen it on the media feed, a phenomenal outcome, is that we had a SWAT commander, we had our CNT commander, our Crisis Negotiation Team commander, but we had an incident commander that oversaw the warrant service. Captain Cornelius was the incident commander this morning at 0400. Lieutenant Fromer was the SWAT commander. Lieutenant Gray was the CNT commander. So all of that was in place. Now this was a warrant service, so a deliberate action on our part to our pre-planned event. But that is how we part of a tactical plan in what they call the incident command system. And we're also associated with that is that it could be technically a unified command because we had other law enforcement agencies involved, but they were in a subordinate role because there were going to be the search teams and the custodial teams related to the folks that were being taken into custody, and then you had the fire department. So this morning, you probably had 40, 50 folks on an operation, and it was quiet as could be. This morning.
Yes.
Yeah. Just hours ago. Yeah.
I was awake for that too.
Yeah.
See, what I would think is, I remember reading the report on Boston Marathon and Watertown.
Microphone.
When they got to Watertown, there were officers from different departments that Watertown was even aware that they were there.
Yes.
And everybody is really being very proactive, but not necessarily working as a team as effectively as they could.
So we call that self-deployment, and that's a challenge, especially in this region. We're very resource rich, but sometimes you get more people coming to the party than you ask for or can manage. And if they choose to self-deploy and they don't check in with us and we don't know we're here, that's a problem. And that's always been a problem, because when you get police officers are typically motivated, high drive kind of people. They want to get to the problem and help. And sometimes they don't want to make that administrative step of gathering up and checking in and getting an assignment. So that does happen. We exercise that pretty frequently in our mutual aid area to try and mitigate it. But it is something that we know about and we try to address.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like a reasonable idea. Commissioner Liu?
Captain, thank you so much for giving this presentation again. I did listen in last night, and you gave a wonderful rendition of it today, and it was there were elements of last night's presentation and questions that I saw integrated into today's presentation, so very much appreciate it. I do want to reiterate, I think that it was part of the conversation last night, where there was a point made that a significant portion of the BPD force themselves attended BUSD schools, and so I think that that's just an element that I wanted to, revoice from yesterday's discussion in the sense that there is a personal, dedication to response. So thank you again, and it seems like you've had a pretty long 24 to 48 hours.
Yes,
so I
ma'am.
appreciate you being here. My question is, in regards to the training on school facilities, it's great to hear that that is an ongoing process and more are planned. Can you speak more to kind of like the protocol for the schools that are selected for training? And also, I can't imagine you can train at every single school in BUSD. So what are some kind of learnings that you're taking from individual schools that can then be applied across different campuses? And if you are kind of working with other agencies, as you mentioned, how does that kind of work into your trainings and your planning?
So I guess I'm going to ask a clarifying question.
Yes.
Are you referring to the training that we're doing for our personnel on campuses, or training that we're doing for the school district folks in some of the forum sessions?
Personnel on campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, the school selection, we kind of looked at situations. Many times in the past, we were seeing a lot of shootings at high schools, so we were focused on high schools first. Now we see elementary schools. There doesn't seem to really be a pattern, so a lot of the times, it is a simple matter of where haven't we been before and what's available. Because the schools go on break, but it doesn't mean that every campus is available all throughout that break time. They have in-service training, they have other events scheduled, so we have to navigate that and find a location where we can go. So a lot of the times that is how we look at it. Where have we not been? We want to go somewhere new if we can, and then what's available.
Got it. And it does seem, to your point, that you have been doing more in high schools, at least historically speaking. Mm-hmm. Do you see differences in how you're navigating like different campuses, whether it be the scale, the type of campus, and are you kind of incorporating that into like the nuances of the various response plans?
So there is a difference there. And each campus has its own nuances. Some have more indoor-focused hallways. Mm-hmm. Some have more exterior access. That's usually the biggest physical difference. What we typically see too is you see high schools where you have multi-story buildings. We don't see that a lot at elementary schools. Those aren't huge challenges to overcome those differences because the fundamentals remain the same. Where what we talk about in training and what we try and exercise where we can is the real difference there is going to be in the student population and how we're managing that student population while we're in the school. Because high school students, we can give some direction to, we can get them to do what we need to do. Middle school students, maybe. If we need to move middle school students physically, we can. Elementary school students, good luck. When they're scared and don't know what's going on, it's going to be a very different circumstance to try and get them where we need to get them. And so we work with the campus people there to try and get them to understand that they've got a major role to play in helping us wrangle those kids, because they're going to be scared and they're going to have a hard time understanding what we're trying to get them to do when it comes time to evacuate them and move them.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it's very difficult to even hear the planning that needs to go into this, so I do appreciate the thought and the preparation for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Coombs?
Thank you. And again, Captain Cornels, thank you for being here. And we're advisory in nature, so we don't have the authority to give you a day off tomorrow. But for all the officers that were involved, everyone that was involved, starting at, 3 o'clock this morning, probably?
03, yeah.
Yeah, that's a long day. So we really appreciate you being here, and especially after last night and preparation for next week. There's a lot going on. This is a question for Ms. O for future meetings. Are there any issues when we make reference to other meetings that we're making reference to the school board meeting last night with the city council, but I'm wondering if there are any issues related to making reference to meetings that not necessarily all of us were privy to. So that's a question for future meetings, because we're just going to blow right through that right now, and it's going to be a non-issue for us.
She's been texting me now because we went a little off topic with command and control.
Yeah.
Commissioner Liu brought it back, but it was captivating. I told her it was interesting and captivating, but we got to stay on school safety. So she'll ping me up. She's watching it, and
Great.
I'll respond.
Perfect, thank you. And I will add with that, we may want for a future meeting to look and give a more presentation on command and control, because my understanding is that there's a couple of different systems that are used, and I'd be curious to learn more about how Burbank applies that. It's the NIMS versus the SEMS systems, and which is SEMS is also referred to as the ICS or
ICS, SIMS,
yeah,
all of the above.
It would be good for us to get that later on, I think, if we could do that.
But that could be agendized. Yes,
that's for later. So one of the this is first off as a comment. This has come up in prior commission meetings as well, and it came up this evening. Chief, you make reference to this as well. One of the things I just want to acknowledge is that a lot of the work that we're doing, this included, is that we're often responding to the national narrative. So I really appreciate the information we're getting, and I also want to acknowledge the extra work that goes into having to respond to what's going on somewhere else, because that's a regular theme here, unfortunately, with the work that we do. Another comment, Burbank, I know, has chosen to not have a separate school police department, and again, from the meeting last night, there's been prior discussions around school resource officers, whether they should be on campus and where they should be located, whether they're visible, that type of thing. Because we're advisory to the police department, it's really not our place to tell the school district whether they should have SROs on campus or not. But I just want to lift up that it's really imperative that this be worked out so it's a non-issue. You made reference to having the phone numbers of the principals last night, so that way you can reach each other in case there's something that happens. It would be really nice to be in a place where the issue around having an officer on campus is worked out before any incidents come up, and I just want to advocate for that, just to make sure that gets worked out. So one of the things that you'd mentioned, you talked about regular ongoing training, and to make sure that everybody's familiar with how to respond to an incident. I hate to ask this, but are those protocols, every time you go through a training exercise, are those protocols documented for training purposes for new staff?
Yes, we have our training curriculums are documented, along with who the instructors are, and who attended.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so so the curriculum is laid out, the protocols are, what's covered in the training is laid out, and that is all documented in our training platforms.
Great. That's helpful for when future staff come on. I'm going to jump around in some of my questions and everything. I actually got a chance a number of years ago in another life to attend a VITRA training, the Violence and Threat Risk Assessment. I couldn't remember that for a minute. Kevin Cameron, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I think, is part of it or something like that. And I know that a former Met officer from Burbank had participated in that training when I did it a number of years ago. Are officers going to the VITRA trainings now? Is that part of the training curriculum?
I don't know if they're going to VITRA in particular. I do know that we have our school resource officers, some of our detectives who go to the different threat assessment
Great.
courses. I can't speak to whether it's specifically VITRA or not, but we do have people who are going to ongoing training for threat assessment.
Perfect, thank you. And when's the last time Burbank hosted a mutual aid training exercise for schools?
So I think we're going back to 2019, which
Okay.
would be right before the pandemic. And
Okay.
that was the last time that we hosted one. I had hopes to do one over winter break, but I'm going to have to see where we are with the pandemic and our protocols there for in-person training, because that's something where we're navigating different cities and their requirements. So
Right.
so 2019 would be the last one right before the pandemic. I don't like the word hope, but my hope is to do it in winter this year.
Again, in another life, I was involved in a training exercise at I think it was Pico Rivera High School or something like that a number of years ago, and the FBI was actually participating in it as well. I'm not sure if FBI or any other outside of Area C law enforcement entities participate in the trainings with you.
So we have had, typically in our ongoing Area C meetings and trainings, we will have components from the different federal agencies. I will say a lot of the times when we're, especially in a tactical response, they typically don't participate in the field level response. They will participate in some of the command and control exercise because they may have some involvement there. But generally speaking, when you have an active incident where we have a bunch of local police officers, they usually tend not to mix in with a movement training there.
Perfect.
Just because I think they recognize that for them, that would be something where they're probably self-deploying outside of their typical skill
Great.
set.
And it can get complicated.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick, related to this, and this again, this is part of the national narrative as well. How can, briefly, and I'm also mindful of the time, which is why I'm rushing through. If you can speak to how do you want civilians and bystanders involved or not involved in school incidents? This is part of what came up in Uvalde. This comes up in other locations. This can be something that needs to be additionally managed in addition to the threat itself. How do you want civilians and bystanders involved or not involved?
So the number one thing I would say is if somebody finds themselves in a bystander situation where they are in the incident, is to get themselves and those they are responsible for to safety. I would much rather they get out and run, and we will find them later. As far as especially incidents at schools, especially with social media now, these incidents become public knowledge, very rapid fashion. It spreads like wildfire. I have a 6-year-old son. If I'm aware of something happening at his school tomorrow morning, the impulse is going to be to get in my car and drive there and go do something. And I understand that. The problem being that a lot of the times that is going to insert more problems and more complexity into an already problematic and complex incident. So part of our protocol, part of our discussion with the school district is we want them to get ahead of things. When there's an incident at a school, we want them to start notifying parents. There's been an incident, the police are here managing it. Please go to this location for family assistance. We're going to have a presence there. The school district will have a presence there. We want them to come somewhere where they can get information. They can get reunified with their kids as we're processing them out of there, and they can be involved and have information without being inside the incident.
Fantastic.
And adding to the problem.
You actually led me into my next question too, so
Good for me.
we're on the
All right.
same wavelength. This is more of a comment for a future presentation because we do have something scheduled around officer trauma and well-being and looking at kind of the wellness center for officers down the road. You talked about having a child and how you would respond to having that child. It's natural to have those reactions, and I'm hoping that when we talk about the wellness center, we can talk about how officers manage that. Both manage that in the incident and manage it after the incident. So I just wanted to kind of put that as a placeholder to include that. At first, I was worried that it was my wife just watching too many television shows that involve officers that get upset about their kids and stuff, but it's real. So we want to make sure we include that. Last question for you, just related to, you brought it up at the beginning of the presentation, and you made reference to suspected child abuse reports and the work of the Department on suspected child abuse reports, specifically around the pandemic. Because kids were at home, again, you probably don't have this information readily available, but do you have a sense of a dip or a change in suspected child abuse reporting and investigations during the pandemic when we had kids at home versus when they're back to school now? Because that's just, in addition to that information coming up, that's an added stressor on everybody that's involved, which is important to respond to. But have you seen a change in the numbers since we've come back from the pandemic?
So this is going to be anecdotal because I don't have hard numbers, but every suspected child abuse report that comes in typically gets sent to us, and it comes through our patrol office for assessment and referral to see if we're already investigating or if it needs to be referred for a report. I will say that during the pandemic, we saw a drop, and when students came back to school, we saw an increase. And there's two parts of that equation. Number one may be that while they were at home, they were being exposed to more contact and more potential for some suspected abuse. And at the same time, they weren't at school for people to see and talk and vet things out and make suspected child abuse reports. So there was a dip, and there's been an increase. I don't believe it's a marked increase from years prior. I think we're probably seeing a return to about what would be our average.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you for your time this evening.
Sir.
Good. Commissioner Fruzen?
Yes, I just want to say also thank you for the presentation. I'm also a mom. I have 2 young kids in BUSD, so this is an issue that I don't want to think about, but I know we have to all think about it, unfortunately. And so I mostly have 2 questions. The first one is around the safety assessment that you spoke about, that is done in conjunction with a lot of other partners. And so I'm wondering, as we were talking about, just gun safety generally and the free gun lock program and things like that, is part of the assessment finding out if there are firearms in the home and offering information around firearm safety or ways to get rid of the firearm, safely and things like that. And then also just generally, can you speak a little bit more about that assessment and what does it look like?
So with the firearm question, the answer is yes. It depends where the conversation is going, and sometimes it may be an assessment just based on some depression or some feelings, and the gun factor may not factor into it, especially when we rise to the level of where we're looking at a potential for a mental health detention for some evaluation. The gun issue is the very first and biggest checkbox on that list of things to address. In certain cases, we are actually statutorily authorized to seize those firearms. In other cases, we have had discussions with parents where they have voluntarily given them over to us for safekeeping while the crisis gets managed. So that is a big part of it. The MET team is also involved with the gun violence restraining order program for individuals who may be exhibiting some concerning behavior and applying for those. I think, again, this is anecdotal, but I think they've applied for 3. They've had 2 that have been approved and 1 that is in process. So they are at the forefront of trying to address that issue when we have concerns, and especially in the mental health field, of getting a hold of those firearms before something tragic happens. And then as far as the process of the safety program, I'm going to apologize. They don't work in my shop, and I'm not 100% versed in how the process works. I know it is typically there is a reporting from the school district of some concern. Some sort of concerning behavior, some sort of concerning statements, and that is referred up to the board, members of the school district, members of the school site, mental health team, some of our juvenile folks, who will go through this assessment process that they're receiving training on and prioritize things and make a decision about whether this needs some sort of immediate mental health evaluation intervention, or if this is something that could be managed through counseling and services and having the student in to have a sit down. The very specifics of it, I'm not going to be so well versed in.
Thank you for that. And the second question is, You had mentioned briefly about a new technology, gun sense. If you could just speak a little bit more about what that.
I might defer to my chief on that because he's
sure.
been in contact with the company on this, and he's probably more well equipped to speak on it than I am.
Well, yeah, thank you, Adam. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. This is someone I've known for many years. He's a psychologist up in the Bay Area. He's affiliated with a group from Silicon Valley that is looking at technology and its gun threat detection. And it's really innovative stuff. These are folks that have been successful in other high-tech related inventions. So I'm looking for an outlet. So if anybody sees an outlet, well, an outlet like this, a smaller, two plug, it's a device that would go in that outlet, and it spans for about 300 feet, 360 degrees, and it allegedly will detect weapons to include knives, handguns, rifles, and then it will detect in minus 0.2 seconds. I don't understand that math, but then it makes an alert to like an Everbridge type notification system, however you want to structure it, and you would get resources coming that way. The point, and I was with these folks for 2+ hours. This is a whole new industry now as far as the technology, as far as door locks, automatic door locks, and other notification systems, but it hasn't been exercised. So we have the good fortune, because I've known this guy for a long time, is that we're going to test it late summer, early fall. They'll send a crew down here, and we're going to actually look to see if it has value for the law enforcement community, not only law enforcement, certainly government, schools, and other venues that are vulnerable. So allow me to follow up in the fall, where they give it a thumbs up, or we're going to do the evaluation, or we say it's not worth it. But technology is expensive, so we have to be mindful of that. So did that answer your question? Yeah, and you can go on their website, but it's modest. But you look at the folks that are behind the scenes, and they have some pretty good street creds. GUNSENS.
Commissioner Hakovian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Thank you so much, Captain Cornelius, for that wonderful presentation. And first a comment, just to thank you for that distinction between what the Burbank PD is doing and what the rest of the country, and what the small rural agencies are doing as well, making that distinction between the two as far as the type of culture, the type of mindset, the type of resources they have access to, and the type of training versus what we're doing here. And I say that because, over Christmas break, I was in Wisconsin for Christmas break, and it's a small town, New London, Wisconsin, 7,000 people population. The police chief was the local mayor and was the local plumber. And what was really interesting is the police department was purely volunteer. So I can only imagine a school shooting happening in that location, how that response would be. So I really appreciate that distinction. And second, I know that there's currently a collaboration between the BPD and BUSD. And so I know the fire department. I'm part of the community emergency response team with their certification program, about 3 months with LAFD, part of Battalion 12. And they did a wonderful job of training us to prepare for earthquake safety active shooters and different disasters that can possibly happen in the community, and kind of taught us that how ill prepared we were to respond to those emergency situations. So does the BPD, since you guys are already involved with BUSD, have some type of certification program, or can develop a certification program where the teachers can really learn the tricks of the trade of what they can do, preventative measures, things to look out for, et cetera, and would that even help?
So we do training programs for the school district. Where it gets interesting is now we're talking about two different organizations, and so they may have some policy and legal restrictions on how they do things that I, as a police officer, don't quite understand. We're happy to do training. I don't know that we would be in a position to do certifications for them, There are other agencies. One of the agencies that came out to assist us with this 3-day training we did at the high school, that they do, they're a nationally recognized through the Department of Homeland Security. They're a nationally certified agency, and they do school district specific staff training. That would probably be what I would recommend, because we're conversant with their curriculum and how they're training things. We follow their model, and to have the school district online with that would probably be a better fit, because they've already been vetted out. They've already established a curriculum that's been certified. They're nationally recognized. They do this stuff for free. I've shared that information with their staff over there.
Commander, I have a question about, in regard to school safety, seems like that there was, in a number of the situations, there was internet activity that preceded the issues. How does that work? Do we do any monitoring of the internet? Do we hire an outside company? Is there something that our officers need to know about a contact? I don't know if does TikTok offer a private service or something?
So social media is challenging because there are probably billions of postings and messagings going back and forth every day. We do not monitor social media because we may have some investigative interest in monitoring certain things, but as a broad net, we don't specifically monitor it. I know that there are agencies and organizations out there that do. Some of them are particularly geared towards child abuse. Some of them are particularly geared towards other things, and they have a reporting mechanism. We recently received something from the FBI on a social media post that we sent investigators out to go work on. So there is a reporting network, a reporting stream that comes through. The city of Burbank, in the global perspective, we are a tiny speck, and we're not going to have the resources to monitor all that, but we do rely on a reporting stream that comes to us. A lot of the times what we see, social media driven here in Burbank, is we're going to see a student or an individual post something provocative, and it's going to start to make its way around that social circle, and then it's going to spiral out, and maybe a parent picks up on the thread, and that's where it comes to the school district. Sometimes it goes through a couple other layers of other parents and other people. It goes to the school district, comes to us, and we get started. What I would encourage to anybody who's watching this now is, if you see something concerning in your child's social media thread, or in a thread that you believe is a potential threat of violence, is don't just share it in your Facebook group. Please pick up the phone and call us and let us know, because we may be aware, but we may not be. And you may be the first person that has reported something, and get that clock started so that we can avert a tragedy. And that would be my ask, is that we get direct reporting from people who know things.
This may sound a little odd. I'm into privacy, but when information is shared with you about a potential danger, do we keep a record of that? And how long do we share it with other departments?
So if something sparks a criminal investigation, absolutely, we keep a record of that, and we may keep a record of that for decades, depending on what the outcome is. So if something sparks a criminal investigation, absolutely, we have records of it, and we maintain them, because it may come into play in court cases down the road. It may come into play into other investigations down the road. So, and it's going to depend where that investigation goes. That defines our retention time on it. But yes, if we're getting something reported to us that's a potential crime that we're investigating, we absolutely have records of it.
All right, so it doesn't matter that it doesn't have to be a crime.
If it's a potential crime that we're investigating, and part of it is vetting that out, yeah, we treat it the same as a crime that's being reported to us.
All right. Good. I certainly appreciate the information, and I know it's been a long day for you.
It has, sir.
But
Okay.
I think that we're going to wrap up here, and I think the chief has something to share. So thank you very much, Captain.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
So these have been two very long presentations. Fromer's presentation set a record. set a record.
Really?
Oh, it did. Oh, yeah, yeah. But very productive. So hopefully it was productive for you. And I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to highlight what Commissioner Coombs talked about is July 9th, we had the ice cream social. To give you a backstory, it was a collaboration with the Burbank Police Foundation and the Burbank Police Department. We had over 350 folks attend the largest community event of that nature, absent National Night Out, those types of event, and it was just a great outcome. Youth Academy graduation Friday, July 27th. To remind folks again, National Night Out will be Tuesday, August 2nd. That'll be at Johnny Carson Park from 5:30 to 8:30. The Community Academy graduation is August 4th. Thursday, August 4th. Just a reminder, we do have the joint session with the City Council and the Police Commission on September 27th. Ms. Takahashi talked about 988. I actually met with our mental health clinician today. We talked about that, and I don't believe that we have posted anything on our social media, and we'll get something out probably tomorrow. Pretty straightforward. I'd just like to remind folks that you don't have to do anything about the agenda next week or next month, because that is the mandated training from City Council. The only part that I do believe it's elections, so I'm going to defer to Ms. Nakamura as far as how we're going to look. But for the most part, you're going to be in a training mode after you do your elections. Is that probably how it's going to go, Sherry? So with that, is there any questions before we wrap it up? We know what's happening in August. We know what's happening in September. In October, probably we'll have a pretty robust agenda.
I do have one question, and this is for Chair Chapman and the commission, is because we're not going to have we were meeting the next 2 months, but we're not actually having a meeting where we're going to really have the opportunity to agendize anything. We do have something on the annual calendar noted for an October presentation. We do need to actually motion to actually put that on the agenda, because it's just a placeholder right now. And do we need to agendize anything else for October at this point? Sure. So on the calendar, we had pedestrian safety was earmarked for October. And I know that this is something that Commissioner Feruzin has been very interested in as well. I'm wondering if you want to make a motion to specify what we want to focus on for October?
I would actually ask maybe the chief or maybe someone else here, because I do have the a data request in, but I haven't gotten the data back yet, so it's kind of been waiting on that to sort of then kind of have a subcommittee look at that and sort of present something back to the commission and see if there are any recommendations we can make. So I don't know if there's any update or anything on that. Okay. Yeah, so I wouldn't at this time, just because I'm not sure when, it depends on when that data comes in.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, I know that the subcommittee was composed of 3 of us. And I just want to, given that we have one commissioner who stepped down and now we're not supposed to meet with more than 2. So with all of that, should we push that out and switch it? Because if we're going to report back and there was already a subcommittee of 3, I'd imagine we kind of had to put that on hold unless we narrow it down to 2 people. In terms of
I think for now I wouldn't agendize it for October for that reason. In this, although I think in September we should have a new commissioner.
Yes, exactly.
Would you like to make a motion here?
I do have a couple of motions to make, though. In lieu, this is from where we'd started this earlier today. Not as early as the department did. I'd like to make a motion that we establish a subcommittee of 2 members to learn about and report back on the Burbank Police Department's contracting process. So this would be not for a presentation, but this would be the work of the subcommittee to then report out on at a future meeting.
Could you be a little more specific?
Sure. Let's see. I'd like to motion that we establish a subcommittee of 2 members to engage the department about the contracting process so this subcommittee could report back to the commission as a whole on general parameters of contracting within the department.
Can you specify, like, if you need vendors?
The
How contracts are selected, how vendors are selected, the RFQ or the RFI process, the selection process, the vetting process for potential contractors.
Is this
Well,
OIR? Are you?
No, this is not, OIR would be a contractor, but this would just be to get general information. This is specifically related to the public comment period.
And OIR is with the city attorney.
Right.
Yeah. Commissioner Elman?
I'm just wondering, I mean, how general is this going to be? Is it a tow truck company, or is it who services the vending machine?
This should be general to how vendors are selected and how vendors are contracted with.
Commissioner Elman, I think I made a mistake. I opened up something here. Commissioner Coombs, would you go ahead and complete your statement there so that we can then go on ahead and discuss it?
Sure. So the motion is to establish a subcommittee of 2 commission members to meet with representatives from the Burbank Police Department and identify the general contracting parameters that are used to select vendors from the request for information process, request for qualifications process, verification of vendor qualification, et cetera, that they can then report back to the commission at a future meeting.
Do we have a second there? Good. Commissioner Fruzen seconds. And can we have a vote? Raise your right hand if you.
Do you have any further discussion?
Oh, we have to have, or, excuse me, I went out of step. Commissioner Liu?
I just have a quick question. For forming the subcommittee, is it really information gathering, or is it gathering information, considering it, and coming back with topics to discuss in terms of recommendations? Because if it is information gathering, I'm just wondering if it's something that we could have like a, presentation, a brief presentation on, and then
Right.
go back. That's my.
Yeah, this
curious
is
to
just
understand.
information gathering, and this is something that I don't think we need to occupy the department with preparing a formal presentation on.
Okay.
This is work that I think commissioners can handle in partnership with the department.
Got it.
So my question is, if you're going to discuss creating a subcommittee and have somebody, you probably also need to decide who's going to be on it, right? So once you decide that you're going to do it, then you'll decide tonight who's going to be on it?
Correct.
Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second.
And we've had some discussion.
Had some discussion.
Okay. Now I think that we can move ahead with the vote there. All right, if in favor of the motion, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
And I have a second motion.
Part 2.
For,
Do you want to assign your committee members now or no?
sure, I would be willing to participate in that. Can we have a show of hands of who would be interested in participating in that meeting with the police department?
I would like to be on that subcommittee. In my prior life in the working world, I was a contract administrator, so I'm familiar with the subject.
I'm willing to do it. I don't have to be the person to be the other person. Is there anybody else that's interested? Okay, me it is. All right, so it'll be the 2 of us. My second motion is to create a subcommittee of 2 members to meet with the Transportation Commission to share data and information on traffic and safety, including pedestrian safety.
I will second that motion.
We have a second from Commissioner Liu. Is there any particular person there, or do you want to, you're thinking that we,
Let's first see if the commission's going to be
Yeah.
created and then go forward from there.
Yeah, let's see if the subcommittee, we have to vote to see if the subcommittee is going to be created first. So we're starting with any discussion.
all right.
interrupt you? We are timed out. We're no longer public.
Oh.
It just, Gina just sent me, the broadcast has completed.
Oops.
So I think it's public, so by 6 weeks of law school, is going to say we probably need to wrap it up.
All right.
We'll table it, but great.
I second that.
Yeah.
Had a motion, it just wouldn't
Yeah.
be
Right.
sort of
Wouldn't be official.
with the idea that we have a set time that we will be sharing that as a
Right.
commission, right?
We're not public, we shouldn't be discussing.
We can't discuss it right now either. Yeah.
So does that mean that we're just?
We're
so that
done.
means we're done, we don't have a legal motion set, but nothing voted, right?
Correct.
And we just leave it at that?
Even though we timed out, is the video still running?
No.
Okay. So I guess we're adjourned.
We're adjourned. There we go.
Well, there you go.